Welcome to this ordinary meeting of Wingecarribee Shire Council on Wednesday the 13th of December 2023. If I could remind everybody that this meeting is being webcast, and I'd ask you to make sure that your phones are either off or on silent. Acknowledgement of country. Wingecarribee Shire Council acknowledge the Gundungurra and Tharawal people as the traditional custodians of this land we now call Wingecarribee Shire. I pay my respects to elders both past, present and emerging. I would also like to extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders present here or watching today. Statement of ethical obligations. As Administrator, I will undertake the duties of the Office of Administrator in the best interest of the people of Wingecarribee Shire area and act faithfully and impartially in carrying out the functions, powers, authorities and discretions vested in me under the Local Government Act 1993 or any other act to the best of my ability and judgment. I am committed to the declaration of conflicts of interest in relation to items listed for consideration on the agenda or which are considered at this meeting in accordance with the Code of Conduct and Code of Meeting Practice. There's no apologies. Pardon me. Adoption of minutes of the previous meeting of Council. I would move that the minutes of the ordinary meeting of Council held on 15 November 2023 be adopted as a correct record of the proceedings of the meeting and declare that carried. The minutes of the extraordinary... I don't think we had an extraordinary meeting. No. General Manager, declarations of interest.
There are no declarations, Mr. May.
Thank you very much. I circulated an administrator's minute last night which covered a bit of territory, which I don't intend to read. The meeting's long enough without me reading it, but there are two things in particular I'd like to draw attention to. That is the fact that this Shire, for the first time, is getting an emergency operations centre, now fully funded in the Civic Centre. And that was one of the major recommendations of the bushfire report, which some people said was a waste of time, effort and money. And the other one is the great news in relation to Old South Road. I'm told, and keep your fingers crossed for the weather, that Old South Road will open before Christmas to our Merton Street, and the savings of having done it the way it's been done, and I congratulate you and your staff for making the recommendations, will be expended on doing the same treatment, or maybe it won't be to that quality, between our Merton Street and the Old Hume Highway. And I'll deal with that in a minute too, and some other matters which I think in relation to transportation in this Shire. So having said that, I would move that my minute be noted and declare that carried. General Manager, we now move on to reports. First one being Bowral Town Centre Master Plan.
Thank you, Mr. May. I'll ask Mr. Kellick, the Executive Manager Strategic Outcomes, to introduce this item. But before I do, I have an email received from Susan Maloney that was received today in relation to this item and also a presentation. So we'll table that with the minutes, Mr. May.
I understood we also got an email from a planning consultancy in relation to this matter. Who would? I'm sorry, that's Bowral South. I apologise. Yep. Look, it's been a big day.
Gives me great pleasure to introduce the first item at my very first Wingecarribee Council meeting with the draft Bowral Town Centre Master Plan. The draft Master Plan has been developed by urban design consultants and council staff to bring a cohesive approach to the Bowral Town Centre by working with our community. The draft master plan has developed a vision and provides that strategic direction for guiding future development in a way that respects and supports the existing character of Bowral. The vision developed, in summary, is for a loved, bustling, attractive centre that services the local community and visitors that come to enjoy its historic country charm, seasonal colour and distinctive landscape of Bowral and the broader Southern Highlands. Some of the themes in the draft master plan include applying that urban design thinking to movement of vehicles and people, street greening, public domain enhancements, placemaking, and this has led to a draft illustrative master plan. Early ideas workshops were held throughout the year with the community, and the draft master plan was reviewed by the Wingecarribee local planning panel. The draft master plan is now ready for broader public consultation for 8 weeks, commencing on the 22nd of January next year.
Thanks. Look, I've got a few questions about this one. I support the work that's been done and the consultation that's taken place with residents, particularly of Bowral. But my questions relate to parking in Bowral, and I thank the General Manager for on the weekend making available some reports to me so I could read them, because I was, when I read this, I was getting concerned about car parking in Bowral and the fact that under administration we've changed the policy that the council will now take car parking contributions. I think it was from the 2005 report about car parking numbers. There was a shortfall of 250 to 300.
Parking spaces.
Yeah, and but then it also went on, I don't know whether it was the 2005 or the 2012 report, went on to say that many car parking spaces would be lost in Station Street by virtue of its redevelopment. Well, that never happened. We had a sensible compromise, but we provided over 100 additional car parking spaces at the end of Station Street, at the southern end of Station Street. So I became confused, to be quite frank, where the 300 or the 250 or the 300 ended up, and I thought it's got to be, you know, at least 150, still a shortfall. Now the 2012 report talks about a second level in Merrygang Street, behind, I think it's behind the Imperial Hotel. There's not nearly enough space there for more car parking spaces. And the site which I refer to in my minute is the Dirty Jane site, which I understand, and I would hope it's be pretty well finished, the consultation about changing that to 3 hours will be, but I read in the town centre report that's going to be hopefully a village
Public square.
Public square, yeah. So that brought me back to the only real option, in my view, is at the northern end of the Station Street car park, and I've been down there and counted it out. To get 80 to 100, you'd probably end up down near the service station. I think it's Caltex or Ampol, I'm not sure what it is, but you'd end up down there. But now is the time, I think, to flag that in the town centre report, a study, because the panel speaks about landscaping, and I know that's addressed by the staff, but I just want to, and if I'm in the wrong arena, let me know, but I do think that it's an opportune time for us to flag in that study that we're looking further into parking. There is a bit of a rumour going around that the council, in making car parking sites available to developers other than on their site by a contributions plan, which we now have, was simply to repay some of the costs of the car park in Station Street. Well, that's fully funded and paid for, so that's rubbish. So what we're looking at is trying to address the continuing shortfalls. Do I make sense?
That makes sense, and I think the opportunity is now with the draft master plan, and this sort of goes into the next item, but also the integrated transport strategy, which will bring that evidence base of how many parking spaces do we need in the next 3 years, in the next 5 years, and in the next 10 years. The only data we have is from that 2012 report, 2012 strategy, which relies on 2005 data. So we're talking about data that's over 15 years old. So it's very timely that both the master plan is happening as well as the integrated transport strategy.
But in the fair income stakes, when you look at Bowral, I reckon the 2005 report's not going to be far wrong, excepting for the new car parking at the end of southern end of Station Street, because not much has happened, because by virtue of the council's policies, nothing could happen, because people couldn't afford to put parking on their own sites. Your predecessor came forward with a report that I thought was very sensible, that looked sensibly at the cost of us providing the parking as against a developer having to dig to China on some occasions, which just made it impractical. So look, in relation to the recommendation, I do think that in item 1, there should be a recognition of the fact that the officer's recommendation says the council endorse the draft town centre master plan, but does not acknowledge the fact that the panel raised a number of issues which the staff have addressed. And I just need to clean that up. So at the end of number 1, if you 17 March 2024, put a comma, noting the staff responses to the matters raised by the panel, and a new number 3. You're saying that we can put something into the draft plan for the town centre, but you want to rely on information from the integrated transport study, and will that identify parking shortfalls?
That will, and I'm sort of going to the second item here, but that will analyse the town centres. So Bowral will have its own chapter looking at parking utilisation rates, and the background report has already looked at that.
Oh, okay. Okay, well, a new number 3, a multi-deck car park be considered in the draft Bowral Town Centre Master Plan, comma, accommodating 80 to 100 spaces. I'm sorry. No, a multi-deck. Car park, one word. Be considered in the draft Bowral Town Centre Master Plan, capital T, capital C, capital M. Accommodating, is 80 to 100 realistic, do you think?
Working off the 2005 data and the spaces that have come online since then, we were at about 80 to 90% capacity in some car parks. So again, the integrated transport strategy will confirm some of those numbers.
Well, it's interesting you say about capacity, because when the acting general manager, before the current general manager, made a recommendation that the car parking be increased substantially at the southern end of Station Street, well before you arrived, they said it would never be used. Have a look at it. It's almost full every day. So anyhow, multi-deck car park be considered in the draft Bowral Town Centre Master Plan, accommodating 80-100 spaces, adjacent to the rail line, at the northern end of Station Street, comma, subject to the findings of the Windsor-Carriby Integrated Transport Strategy in early 2024. Just while that's happening, should it be the draft Windsor-Carriby? Because you can put that on public exhibition, but no one's going to argue with the true figures.
It will be a draft that we put up.
And that will have the figures in it. And so would I put draft Windsor-Carriby Integrated Transport? Yeah.
Yes.
And nothing I'm doing here is going to slow down the Bowral Town Centre plan, though, is it?
Not at all. We can add the recommendation, the resolution as part of that package.
Spaces adjacent to the railway line at the northern end of Station Street, comma, subject to the findings of the draft Windsor-Carriby Integrated Transport Strategy in early 2024. Declare that carried. GM, the next item is 8.2, the Windsor-Carriby Integrated Transport Strategy.
Thank you, Mr. May. Back to Mr. Killick. Thank you.
Perfect ordering. Council's working with the Institute of Sensible Transport to develop the integrated transport strategy. This is a Shire-wide strategy that develops a vision for the future of all transport modes and explores emerging technologies to better manage traffic and future parking investments like multi-deck car parks. The work includes mapping all sealed and unsealed roads, shared paths, footpaths, bike lane networks, as well as analysing parking utilisation rates in the town centres. The existing strategy is over 10 years old and relies on data from 2005. Part of the scope is also a prioritised program of works for infrastructure, which helps council with advocacy for state and Commonwealth funding and community action through a 10-year action plan as part of the scope of that work. A draft research report has been produced and is part of the agenda package, with early analysis, background policy to ensure evidence-based recommendations are made through that draft integrated transport strategy. A further report will be provided to Council in the first quarter of 2024.
If the draft report's anything like the evidence report, I think the community's going to be very happy with the level of information that's going to be provided for transport generally in the Shire. That's something that has been lacking. In relation to item 8.2, I'd move the officer's recommendation 1 and 2 as outlined on page 27 of the business paper and declare that carried. Next item is Joadja.
Thank you, Mr. May, and again to Mr. Killick. Thank you.
Joadja Heritage Site. Mr. Valera Jimenez described the heritage significance of Joadja, so I'll focus on the report at hand. The Joadja Heritage Site requires a heritage conservation management plan to coordinate the best possible conservation outcomes for this significant site. The CMP will align Heritage New South Wales expectations and guidelines. The Conservation Management Plan will outline what is significant about a site like Joadja and how to carefully manage changes over time to ensure the significance is retained, as well as helping with heritage conservation works and grant funding applications from the state and Commonwealth. Further legal advice is required to work through the financial and legal architecture of the existing Joadja Heritage Deed and Trust. That is why a budget adjustment is proposed to progress the CMP, the Conservation Management Plan work in the interim. And this is while council staff seek legal advice on the deed structure and how to best utilise a restricted reserve fund, the outcomes of which will be tabled to council in early 2024.
Does this mean you're going to get on with it?
We are.
And hope that the $100,000 can be allocated?
Once we sort out the legal and financial architecture,
Well,
yes.
I'm proposing to allocate a considerable amount of money later in relation to the heritage study. This doesn't worry you? You look like you're quite confident that you can do this.
To you, Mr. May. So the purpose of the February report is to deal with the governance structure, and we believe that will not be an issue, but just for added due diligence, we want to seek some advice before bringing that report back.
Well, I don't know whether you've had the opportunity to go down there, but have you been there?
Not yet.
It's well worth the trip, if you like gin too. But you can't expect the owners to maintain all of this. And this is going to help them, hopefully, be able to get grants, as the owners said. Now, thank you for this matter. In relation to item 8.3, Joadja Heritage Trust, I'd move the officer's recommendation 1, 2 and 3 on page 32 of the business paper and declare it carried. The draft community heritage study, General Manager.
Thank you, Mr. May, and second last report for Mr. Killick. Thank you.
Taking up all the airtime. The draft community heritage study was prepared in 2021-2022 and has undergone a round of community consultation. Submissions are currently being reviewed. At the local planning panel of 29 June 2023, the panel recommended an independent peer review of the heritage study be undertaken before the final study is reported to council with the planning proposal. The purpose of the peer review is to confirm the robustness of the study and ensure heritage best practice methods. Two options are presented for the peer review to manage its scope, timeframe and expected expenditure. Option 1 is a comprehensive reassessment of 478 proposed items and 7 extensions to heritage conservation areas by an independent heritage consultant. Due to the projected cost of several $100,000 and a 6-month plus timeframe, option 1 is not recommended. Option 2 proposes a 2-phase review, utilising internal council heritage expertise for a phase 1 to categorise the proposed heritage items into 5 categories based on submissions and objections. Phase 2 will then hand over to an independent heritage consultant for the peer review component. Option 2 is recommended as a balanced approach in terms of time, in-house council resources, and managing external consultant costs. And a budget allocation is required to fund the independent peer review with either option.
While I appreciate the report, it seems from the timeline on page 41 that it's going to go on forever. And I think most people know that I haven't been happy with this from day 3. I was happy on day 1. But this introduces another period of consultation which I think is unnecessary. And I'll tell you what my idea is, and you and the General Manager might want to... I've kind of flagged it with you, but I haven't, because of time constraints, really gone into it. But I've firmed up on an idea that my personal view is the council officers should now be out of the equation in dealing with this matter, and that everything should just be boxed up and given to a consultant or a contractor. But I don't agree with megabucks in doing it. So, and I don't think it's necessary to have an extra public exhibition because we've just had a public exhibition of the community's heritage plan, which has got us into enough trouble, if I could put it that way, or it's taken my life to a degree. So what I'd like to do is all the submissions that are now in it's closed, is package them up and rather than get a consultant, see if you can find a contractor. And there are heritage experts around, and get their views on everything. Now, your option 2 idea I don't think is going to be accepted by the community, to be quite frank, from what I've taken from the community. And there are errors in that report, there's no question about that. But that doesn't, I in no way devalue the hundreds and hundreds of hours that the volunteers have put into it. That's not what I want to do. What I'm trying to ensure is that everybody gets a fair go, but it doesn't go forever. I have committed along the way that I would try and have this finished before I left in September. So what do you think of or you or the General Manager, think of the idea of, and then I'll put some words around it, of packaging it up, taking the council staff out of the equation and the community people who have been doing it out of the equation, and in effect getting a peer review done independently of every item and the conservation areas too. And then that peer review would be done, and because of time constraints, and it's already been publicly consulted, I believe the General Manager then should be able to put on public exhibition, in effect the peer review of the heritage study for formal consultation with a view to making a gateway request to amend the LEP. And I would like to think that could be done, by June, end of June. Is that achievable or ambitious, or remember I'm taking one part out which you can have a comment about as well if you want.
It is ambitious, but I think it is achievable with the right independent consultant or contractor. I do accept that the recommended option with the phased approach does compromise the independence of that peer review, having council staff involved in phase one, and perhaps a alternative option or hybrid option, shall we call it, which truncates the time frame, becomes more manageable in terms of both scope, time and cost.
I'm thinking more of, rather than having a consultant, and a consultant will rewrite everything, we just need to validate what is written and have a look at what the community has put in as submissions. And I think the appropriate person to do that would be a contractor rather than a consultant, working under the direction of the general manager, who would have as much knowledge of heritage probably as me. but the important thing is that the person who we appoint would be the critical person in the equation.
Mr. May, if I may, I think given the feedback that you've received from the community, having that level of independence provides that extra layer of assurance and rigour to the process, which I think can only benefit the outcome. So as Mr. Killick has said, it's an ambitious time frame that you're comfortable with that, Mr. Killick?
We'll take on the challenge. I think we can deliver a request for gateway by the end of the financial year.
Mm. Well, the thing is, if it just keeps going and going, you're going to end up with a 2012, I think, scenario where it just went on forever, and it's unfair to residents. And people have got to be realistic too. There's nothing wrong with being on a heritage list. It's just another hoop you've got to jump through. It's not you can't do anything with your property, but clearly, from some of the submissions I've read, I would question why they're there. Just so you know, I met with the Exeter people, and I don't know whether they've put in another submission, but I told them that community's got to sort out themselves where they believe the heritage conservation area should stop and start. I don't know whether they've put anything in yet, but there's a lot of work to be done, and I think by having your staff involved in it too, may slow it down because they're doing other things as well. There's so much strategic stuff going on. I just think it's a sensible outcome. So you both seem as if... so I would move in relation to 8.4 that one... no, I'm not dealing... I'm not... is that okay? Well, you can take it all out. 1, 2 and 3. I'll end up with about 6, I think. That one, council receive and note the report, and council officers play no further part in the matter. Is play the right word? Right. 2, council endorse an option for a peer review of the community-based study and all submissions received in response to the public consultation process with a view to the final heritage study and planning proposal being submitted to the NSW Department of Planning and Environment. Is that what they're called today, these days? Yeah. For gateway determination no later than 30 June 2024. 2024. Next item. Be 3. The cost for an independent peer review of the community heritage study and exhibition of same by a suitably qualified heritage contractor be reported directly reporting directly to the General Manager be considered as part of the December budget quarterly review for in relation to point 2, it will be necessary for the General Manager to prepare a timeline for public exhibition of the final draft study for consideration by both the planning panel and council. And if we're not going to bring it back to council, you need delegation. Further, number 5, don't put further, for number 5, the General Manager be delegated authority to place the draft heritage study, comma, post peer review, comma, on public exhibition. You have your go, then I'll have a go. So, I know you're tidying up, that's fine. Oh, before you do that, can I just suggest one change? That council support an option, I know the option of peer review of the community-based study. Okay, thanks very much for that. I know it's not easy. Well, just before I put it, in effect, all I'm doing is saying I disagree with getting a consultant doing it and reinventing the wheel, because that's obviously what will happen by virtue of what you're saying in the advices. $250,000 or something. I think if you can find a contractor, and I'm getting rid of the need for another exhibition before you get to the Gateway exhibition. I'll declare that carried. If you want to go and start work. Sorry about that. Next item is Yarrawa Road, Moss Vale, letter of offer.
Yarrawa, back to you, Mr. Killick. Last item. Thank you.
Thank you. The Yarrawa Road, Moss Vale report responds to a council resolution of 16 August 2023 to identify a mechanism to facilitate appropriate infrastructure funding and proceed with the rezoning of land at Yarrawa Road, Moss Vale. A voluntary planning agreement, or VPA, is proposed as the most appropriate mechanism, and a letter of offer to enter into a VPA is the proposed instrument to facilitate this. It is recommended that in-principle support be provided for a legally binding letter of offer to enter into a VPA from the owners of land at 121, 131 and 153 Yarrawa Road, Moss Vale, as the pathway forward for infrastructure funding and rezoning of this land.
Well done. In relation to item 8.5, I'd move the officer's recommendation 1 and 2 on page 53 of the business paper and declare that carried. I'd now move suspensions of standing orders in relation to item 9.1, delivering better services framework, and declare that carried. I would now move that we resolve into committee of the whole at 4:22 and declare that carried. General Manager.
Thank you, Mr. May. So as you'd be aware, under the Local Government Act, councils are required, and under the IP&R framework, councils are required to undertake service reviews. It's a relatively new requirement for all councils in New South Wales. With us today we have Catherine Ridley, who is working with us on this project, and the Chief Financial Officer, Pav Kuzmanovsky, will also join her. We thought it was important to explain the breadth of service reviews and service planning, but also how that fits within the council's overall planning framework. So Ms. Ridley.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you. Just waiting for the presentation to come up, because we have a little presentation for you. Here we go. So today, this presentation is in support of the report to Council about delivering better services to the community and adopting the framework, hopefully, and also noting the service reviews as well that we're proposing for 2024-25. To give you a little bit of context though, before we dive into this, the framework is actually a strategic document, so it's about what we can provide information to the community to, and the organisation as well, is taking a holistic view of council services and how we ensure that they're sustainable and fit for purpose. It's trying to provide a bit of a context for discussions with the community about levels of service into the future as well. This is about outlining council's approach to both planning and reviewing our services, and the framework was endorsed by the Audit, Risk and Improvement Committee as well as council's executive team for council's consideration. The aim is that we will review it at least every 4 years, but obviously it can be adjusted annually based on the outcomes of the reviews themselves and feedbacks on the process. The framework is actually talking to a context, and that context is the local government context where we deliver a variety of services, both internal and external. Some are mandated and others are optional. We have at Wingecarribee, we have at least 15 service areas that are supporting, I think it's at least 53 services, and beyond those services you actually have sub-services as well. So there's a huge amount of scope in terms of the services that we're trying to cover in this framework. But our aim is to ensure that all council services are effective, that they're affordable, and that they're meeting current and future community needs. And to achieve this, we need to understand not only how the services are performing, but to make sure that all of the services are well planned, that they're appropriately resourced, and they're able to adapt in changing times. So why develop the framework? In the first instance, it's important to understand that the legislation was changed in 2021 to require all of the councils in New South Wales to undertake service reviews, and we need to publish that program of service reviews as well, and that must happen in our next delivery program. And then we report on the outcomes of those service reviews as well in the annual report. The other part of the legislation is that we need to engage the community on what we call affordable and acceptable levels of service. So the framework is supporting that, and it's trying to provide, I suppose, a framework for discussion around the challenges that not only the council but also the community needs to understand when we're trying to ascertain what the affordable and acceptable level of service is. The types of things that they would be considering are the demands on the service. It could be growing, it could be changing, it could be decreasing. What are the implications on the council in terms of the cost implications for providing that service into the future? And what are the impacts on the council in terms of long-term sustainability, in terms of providing that service as well? It's important to note at this point that the organisation actually has an improvement roadmap, and that improvement roadmap has certain objectives, two of which are around ensuring that we have a long-term viability in terms of the long-term financial sustainability of the council, and we're also trying to improve how we engage with the community, and this framework has been designed to support those objectives. So our approach is twofold to achieving best value services. We plan our services well and we review them periodically. I'm going to talk you through that. Service planning we already do, really important to note, but it considers the strategic and operational actions that a service needs to undertake to achieve its objectives, who's responsible, what resources are required as well. Directly, this information informs our operational plan every year and our 4-year delivery program, and as well as our resource allocation. Next year, we're looking to broaden those horizons with the service to ask the managers to think about their longer term 10-year goals. And this is actually about identifying issues that are impacting the service, challenges and opportunities. So the service plans themselves include key data around the service. So it could be the purpose of the service, how it aligns to strategy, performance against agreed targets. It provides the community and the council with a full view of each service at the coordinator level, and that's what we're trying to achieve here. We want to review those plans annually to ensure that all of the data is up to date. This process actually helps, we hope, to build the capacity of the managers and the coordinators in terms of understanding their services better and reporting back to the community better as well. So that up-to-date service data will then help us transition to service reviews more quickly as well. And any outcomes of service reviews will be included in the service plans as well. And they can help us monitor and report the implementation of those service reviews. I'd like to touch on levels of service because this is important and it's work in train, so this is something that we already do. For anyone in the audience who doesn't understand what we mean by that terminology, when we talk about levels of service, we're trying to define the quality or standard of service, so what the customer can expect to receive. And often we actually define that in terms of two things. So we can talk about the customer expectation, but we can also talk about the technical level of service. That's more asset focused, and that could be, for example, around the condition of a building. But we need to understand both when we're talking about affordable and acceptable service levels. When we get to your operational plan and your asset management plans, this is where you actually balance the levels of service within available funding and you make that publicly available. The operational plan for next year will include existing levels of service information relating to service. So we're actually gathering that information now. So that's around the location, the quantity, the quality, the frequency, for example, of the service. And also noting that that planning cycle will include engaging the community on levels of service in discussion with the incoming council. In terms of the service reviews, this is where we actually dive a little bit deeper into the actual services. So the service reviews will consider the cost, quality and efficiency of a service, what's working well, perhaps what needs to change. Are we achieving best value? And when we talk about best value, we're looking at the overall value of the service. So it's not just about the financial value, but it's the value that it brings to the community as well. It enables councils to make that evidence-based decisions about the services that it delivers and to what extent and standard. It could result in a very small adjustment to a service, but it could actually result in a significant change to a service. So the framework provides guidance and standards for both staff and externals, and it outlines roles and responsibilities in the process. It's probably, at this point, important to note that a review can be led internally or externally. The approach should be determined by factors such as the objectives and scope of the review, including the complexity of the review, the available resources, so including your in-house skills and expertise, and the level of the level of service impact. And potentially you may need to have an external or independent lens reviewing your service. The framework suggests that to the council they should be considering the following when prioritising the service for review. So you're looking at importance, so the level of importance placed by the community or organisation on the service, satisfaction with that service, the value, so looking at the cost of the service and return on investment, performance against those agreed performance measures, impact, risk, and of course legislation. So is it actually required under legislation and do we have any issues of non-compliance? The framework also provides higher level guidance for anyone engaging in this space, which is around developing the service plans and conducting the service reviews. It includes information for staff participating in or facilitating reviews. I think that's very important to have a consistent language around that and what they need to expect. It defines roles and responsibilities for the service review process, and it also includes the community's role as a key stakeholder. It'll be reviewed every 4 years following the local government election, but of course it can always be updated annually as well. That's a little bit of an overview of the framework. Happy to take questions now, or we can, I think Pav was going to now talk to you about the actual implementation of the framework, if you'd like to hear that.
I've got plenty of questions.
Okay.
I'll swap seats with you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so as Catherine was saying, this is now about how we're planning to implement the framework and I guess put it in action. So just recapping some of the key points that Catherine was reiterated earlier on in her presentation was that we want to provide assurances to council and the community that council officers are providing best service and best practice and value for money in providing services to ratepayers. We want to embed a culture of continuous improvement throughout the organisation by having these reviews performed on a cyclical basis. It is a requirement under our integrated planning reporting framework. And I guess it helps me in my substantive role of CFO to take some pressure off the LTFP as well, or also identify some risks in the LTFP as well. So it's some of that information we don't know, but we don't know. So it helps us tease out some of these operational issues we may foreshadow in the future. How we're planning to conduct our service reviews, we're looking at, Catherine said there are options within the framework to run it in-house or out-house. We are proposing to go out to a suitably qualified vendor to run it through a procurement process to see how we can deliver it on the basis that it's impartial in nature. We want to get best practice within the, I guess, the programs that we're going to look at doing the relevant services with respect to the staff that we've got in-house. We believe external will provide a different lens over how we're currently operating, ensure that the vendor is experienced in change management, and also give the managers an opportunity to upskill through a service review. I'm not sure if many of the managers have gone through service review frameworks or service reviews in itself, but it also gives an opportunity for the managers to upskill. So when it comes around to the next cycle of service reviews, they'll have that under their belt. So what are the proposed service reviews to be conducted? I guess we've got a heavy infrastructure focused service review. So looking at roads and drainage maintenance, parks and open spaces, building maintenance, pools management, and we've also gone for an internal service review, which is a people and culture team as well. So we are looking at both internal and external to ensure we are operating in an efficient environment. The focus on the infrastructure side of things is where our greatest pressure is coming with the LTFP, with increased costs, escalating costs, the recovery of depreciation, and us having to, I guess, squeeze more out of our rate dollar, in particular with the rate peg and inflation not aligning with those anomalies as well. When will the service reviews commence? So we're looking at starting those in 24-25. So we'll do a lot of lead work in the backgrounds through the 23-24 year to look at going into procurement in the 24-25 financial year to be rolled across 2 financial years. It is going to be dependent on budget and how many service reviews we can get out depending on the available budget. The program will focus on infrastructure-related expenditure where council is experiencing pressures in its long-term financial plan, as I've just said, in particular in that infrastructure space and that increased cost in depreciation. And then as a part of the service reviews, there will be a period of time that these service reviews are implemented. Some of them might have lead times of up to 12 or 18 months, maybe over multiple years, in particular where there's structural or there may be financial matters that may be considerations in implementing some of these outputs. So in adopting the framework, we take the resolution as noted in the business paper. Thank you.
Ms Ridley said you could have 30 of these. Do you know how many you're going to have to do?
Potentially, that's correct.
When are you going to know?
We need to go through, I guess that's something we need to develop. So we've developed one over the next 2 years to get us through to the next council cycle. As we go through and determine what the costs are, we then can get a feel to develop a more comprehensive cycle.
But wouldn't you want to first work out what you want to be subject of review?
I guess looking at the LTFP and where our pressure points are, looking at the risks, it was more the risk-based approach. And
No.
Sorry.
I understand the risk, but you must have an idea of the 30 you may have to do.
We may need to, we do have a list, and as Catherine was saying, we've got our services and then there's sub-services as well. So we will need to develop a more detailed program of those outlying into the future years of the delivery program. So we're just looking at the term of the delivery program to get us over the next 2 years.
Yeah, but is it possible to make publicly available all the services you are going to review?
We can give a list of the services that we could put hypothetical timeframes around them as well, indicative timeframes around those, but we'd need to have a look and see what services it is possible. We'd need to develop that in a bit more detail.
It's going to cost a bomb.
Potentially.
You know, I originally took the view that this is being overcooked, but now what I'm being told now it's not. But what I'm conscious of is I would like a framework or a listing of everything you're going to do and roughly when you're proposing to do it.
Okay.
That way, for an incoming council, it's very clear of the challenge and they're not like me thinking that, you know, this is easy. The other thing, can you define best value services?
For me, for best value services, I guess in terms of a formal definition, I don't have a formal definition, but for me,
I'm just asking.
For me,
got a clue.
It's about ensuring that the community and customers are happy with the service and the service levels that they're providing and being provided in terms of within the limited resources that we've got. So it's, I guess, looking at roads, for example, when I first got here, roads was an issue. We allocated some additional funds to a road maintenance crew. So the service levels that we've got in regards to what we're offering in that roads area has dissipated and the complaints have disappeared. So using that type of approach is obviously we're taking a slightly different approach because it's a risk approach, but value for service is making sure the community is happy with what they're getting in terms of value for money.
To me, there's a big difference. Value for money, I get asked all the time, are we getting value for our rate dollar? And I say, I don't know, because I don't know enough about our finances and I don't know enough about our levels of service. I do know that, you know, in some areas, things seem to be maintained to within an inch of their life. In other areas, they seem to be ignored. And I don't know whether there's levels of service to address that. And that's why I originally said, well, I'd just like to see all the levels of service and a quick review done of that rather than overcooking.
And we are taking that approach through our operational plan. It is it's an evolving process. Last year we developed our services by our budget by service, and we went to level 3. We're now going to level 4 to talk about resources, talk about levels of service as well. So as we capture those, they will then inform these service reviews as well.
I think Ms Ridley wants to dive in there.
I was just going to make a comment on that in terms of we are going back out to the community to talk about what's affordable and acceptable, and for us in the first instance it's actually about defining what we currently deliver within the budget, because you might find that we're actually over-delivering or under-delivering. We need to have that conversation with the community, but define the levels of service in the first instance, go back out to the community and have the conversation. If you want to talk about how we define best value, this is not just about this is the whole value of the service, to my mind. So it's not just about the financial value, this is about the value that it gives to the community. You test that through things like how important it is, the satisfaction with the community as well, and we currently do that. We're looking at strategic objectives as well. Are we actually working towards and fulfilling the strategic objectives of the council and the community in terms of delivering those services? Are the services operating to the standards to deliver those objectives as well? We're looking at quality. So the quality is something that you might measure through community satisfaction surveys. And then you're also looking at fair access. So you're looking at the ease of access to the service, and that could be affordability as well. So there are certain things that we will actually, we consider when we try to determine best value. When we're trying to develop the service plans in this first instance, we're trying to ascertain some of the best information that we have at hand right now to understand whether we are achieving best value, and then we go back out to the community next year to talk to them about, are we achieving best value in terms of perception?
But would it be unrealistic to ask for a list now of all areas over the next 4 years you're going to do these service reviews on?
In terms of service reviews?
It comes down to budget ultimately, and that's
No,
what...
no, I'm not saying about doing it.
Okay.
What's got to be done
What's got to be...
and what you're planning into the future you will do.
I can respond to one thing, and I hope this helps. One thing that we do every year, and we've started it now, and we're trying to build up the capacity of the organisation to do this, understand our services better, understand how we're performing against key performance indicators. We've already started this process. So it's not a matter of, in terms, every service has to understand its service. Whether it goes through a service review, that is another thing, and it may be prioritised for a service review. And we know that we have certain services that, according to the community, are underperforming, so they'll probably be prioritised.
I think,
And I think I'll refer
sorry,
to
Catherine,
Lisa,
I didn't
sorry.
mean to cut you off, but I think that Danielle actually has a list of services. So the question is more about the level, like the number of services and what we're actually doing, not necessarily how we're going about it.
Rome wasn't built in a
Danielle?
day, I understand. What I'm trying to do is have a list and an anticipated time so that the council knows priorities, like road resealing, when are you going to do what road?
Our delivery program does list all our service areas and principal activities. So I'm just looking at page 23. It has the 15 services and then the principal activities that sit under each of those services. What we don't have is the listing when they will happen. I think as we look to review our IPNR documents for the new council, we would then list in the new delivery program what services we'll be looking to review over the term of that council.
So you're talking about page 18.
No, I'm talking about page 23 of the currently adopted delivery program.
Assets, community life and libraries. Yeah. Well, take Shire presentation. Is there a separate one for each of those subheadings, or is there just one for the lot?
I think just to assist, so there'll be services and sub-services. So if you think about records, it's a reasonably straightforward
Let's
service.
go to where people can see.
Yep. Yeah, but if, just as an example, so the council, as we are probably one of the most diverse businesses you will ever be involved in. So we have everything from animal shelters to governance to road construction to water and sewer. So some services like governance are reasonably straightforward. Where we've got, say, Shire presentation encompasses roads maintenance, open space maintenance. Then within open space maintenance, there are parks, there are CBDs, town centres. So part of looking at the service reviews is actually defining those services and getting that level of detail. I think Catherine mentioned sub-services. So in the Shire presentation area, because of the complexity and the breadth of that area, they will have a number of sub-services and maybe even a further layer. Again, if we think about recreation, we have recreation which could be passive and passive open space, active open space. Within active open space, we have fields, we have more constructed or formal facilities. In open space, we have playgrounds. So it's about going through the process of defining those layers in the more complex service areas of what the council does.
But the council, and this is why I wanted to have a community briefing on this, because there's a lot of questions to be asked in my view. This council is no different to 128 other councils around the state in delivering what they deliver. Metropolitan councils deliver different things to regional councils, but there's many councils that deliver water, sewer and roads and everything else. I certainly accept that this council comes off a very low base of what information you do have. I accept that. But what I have trouble with understanding is value for ratepayers' dollar. And whether I see no mention in any of this of market testing, for instance, no mention at all.
So part of, with the service reviews, it is there is benchmarking. It may well be that we market test, but in looking at at some point, but looking at the services we operate, we do also look at benchmarking and look at whether it's quantity or quality or cost and how we compare with other like councils. And I would beg to differ a little bit. This is my 7th council and never ever had water and sewer. But in previous councils, I've had an equestrian park. So I think regional and rural councils are slightly different to metro in that in some of the services, like water and sewer is a significant service and incredibly important to this community because it's actually their health and hygiene. So that they are all very different, but as part of it we do benchmarking, and I think if Catherine or Pav would like to talk a bit about how that happens.
That would form a part of the scope of the procurement activity that we would go through in engaging a consultant to determine. So water services is one we're working through at the moment, where we would ask them to look at pricing, for example, to compare pricing, benchmark pricing, look at pricing models to make sure we're sustainable across our long-term financial plan. Looking at benchmarking of how we've organised ourselves in terms of delivering our services and whether it is effective, so how we compare to other councils. So that would be a part of that exercise in what I'd be expecting when we put the scope for the procurement activity out, to make sure that we capture some of these benchmarking, so we then have an action plan to say, well, hey, we're here, we need to get to here to reach our benchmark to then deliver service X and head to where we need to. And that's sort of saying it might take a couple of years for us to make some of those structural or financial changes early in my presentation, because like you said, you can't build Rome in a day, but we want to evolve to get to best practice, and it's going to take time to bring people on a journey.
Look, I want to emphasise, I'm trying to be constructive. I'm not having a go at anyone. But it's something that I get asked all the time. And, you know, I don't think anyone in this room, people in the gallery too, would argue that this council comes off a very low base. It was a poor example of good local government. And you're all trying to repair that. And as I said, Rome wasn't built in a day. But how you deliver the services too, I think is very, very important. You know, I'm repeatedly told we have trouble getting employees. And I don't know whether we have trouble getting the lower paid employees, but I would presume it's no different. And it's only going to get worse. It's not going to get any better. And, you know, with the price of fuel and everything to come into an area, I just wonder whether all those things are taken into account in these very expensive service reviews, and, you know, whether we are looking at market testing. It doesn't say you do it. That's a matter for the council to determine. But I just seem to think that those are the kind of things that should be given some thought, and there's no mention of it in what's before me. And that was where I was coming from, in a nutshell, from the other day, from the last meeting.
I just wanted to make a comment around the resourcing strategy. So one of the things that we do as part of that resourcing strategy is consider the human resources, our human assets that are required to deliver these services. And we've actually gone through a process just recently to go back out to the services to talk to them about the services that they deliver and what they need in terms of resources. This is an ongoing conversation. The resourcing strategy is very much informed by this framework that we're presenting today. So it's not a different conversation. We have conversations at least annually and quarterly around resources that we need to have in place to provide the services to an affordable and acceptable level. So, absolutely note the concerns around the resourcing strategy and the human resources, but just to note that we are aware of those issues, and that the human resources aspect is very much in play right now, and there's a lot of work happening in that space to not only recruit but to retain those assets.
And I'm in no way being critical of any employees. I'm just trying to be realistic for what the future holds. But, you know, would it be unrealistic to include in the framework value for ratepayers' dollar and exploring of opportunities for market testing?
I don't see an issue with that. We'll find the right place to put it within the document to make sure we do capture value for money. It was implied through the document, but if it's explicitly...
It's not mentioned.
No, that's fine. No problem.
Yeah. Well, that was really where I was heading. Because, look, I've been a general manager myself, and I know how hard it is to retain staff. You get them trained beautifully, and they go and get a better job. There's been experiences of that since I've been here.
I'd just love to make a comment about, and there's been a couple of comments today at the meeting about retention or attraction and retention of staff. And I think there's a few points I would like to make. One is we're in the tightest labour market, I think, that the nation has seen. Wingecarribee has a 0.7% unemployment rate. We do need to be competitive, and that is why we're upgrading or reviewing or refreshing our salary system. And it's over previous councils, they've had a number of goes at it and weren't successful. We are very close, I hope, to finalising that, and that will help. But one of the biggest things that's impacted on Wingecarribee has been its reputation and the way in which people talk about the council, the way in which they refer to the council. 75% of our staff are actually residents and employees, and so they want to feel proud of where they work, and that's changing. But that is a really important thing, that people actually feel proud, and that they, when they're out in their community, that they feel proud telling them, other people, that they actually work for the council. But also within local government itself. Most of the people that are in local government have worked their careers in local government or dipped in and out. And in local government, like many industries, it's a very small world. And again, council reputations. And I have to say, over the last 2 years, the reputation of Wingecarribee has changed in the local government industry. and we can see that in the calibre, and I'll introduce our two new managers at the end of the meeting, but the calibre of people that we are attracting to Invercargill, but also how our neighbours are talking about us, our neighbouring councils, and also the recognition within local government and nationally with the awards we've recently won. So I think there's a whole combination of why, in terms of tight labour market, very, very low unemployment locally, but also Invercargill being talked about and being seen to be a great place to work.
I don't disagree with anything you said, but I think it's only going to get worse, attracting people because of the cost of housing, etc., etc. Yeah, oh yeah, I couldn't agree more. And you've got to pay them the right amount of money. You know, people say they don't work for the money, but at the end of the day, you've got to feed your family, you've got to feed yourself. But I just would, I hear what you're saying about the reviews, and look, it's complex. I understand all that, and everything comes in together, and there was no base information really here to start the project. I understand all of that, but would it be possible to get some indication of roughly when you're proposing to do the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, the 14 or 15 reviews? If it's $155,000 for 3, and that doesn't start till next year.
If I may,
Yeah.
what we can do is look at the services and provide a prioritised program, and then in terms of the order of the services and what to expect as we roll that out, and we can firm up the timeframes once we test the market in terms of the resourcing that we need.
See, I'm not even talking about the resourcing. I'm talking about prioritising and what you want to do, and roughly when. And this is to help the incoming council, by the way.
Sorry, Mr. May, that's what I was saying. So if we list the services in order of priority, then we know the order that we'll be working through them, and we can firm up the timeframes once, because the resourcing is a factor in actual timeframes, but we can certainly create a list that is prioritised.
At the end of the day, the council's the one who should be making the decisions of when this is happening. At the end of the day, I don't recall getting any say in the 3, and I could change that now, but I'm not, because you're professional people, you know what you're doing. But I think when the elected council comes back, they're going to be looking, now that the council is a much more mature organisation, at looking at how you're spending some money in some areas. And I think, you know, that's where I'm coming from. So, well, I'm would thank you for everybody for the discussion. I think it's been well worthwhile. So I would move 1 and 2 and add a 3. Oh, you can take a recommendation. Okay, right. Oh, they might want to ask more. They might say, I'll just outlook is. No, you can recommend. You can do a recommendation from committee to council and adopt it. Yeah. So number 3, reviews include, and if my wording is wrong, and it's going to cause a problem, sing out. Reviews include value for ratepayers dollar and explore opportunities for market testing. And 4, service reviews. Hang on, that's all right, get back to the other one, it's all right. You just said I'm going too quick. Service reviews include value, no, go back up to 3. Service reviews reviews include value for ratepayers' dollar and explore opportunities for market testing but where appropriate. We'll just leave it at market testing. Just leave it at market testing. Okay. 4, service reviews proposed for the future be detailed with anticipated timings to a future meeting. Just wondering whether it'd be better to put noting the service areas identified in Appendix 5. Yeah. Number 4, start off noting the service areas and principal activities detailed in Appendix 5 a proposed interim timeline be presented to a future meeting of the Council. Is that reasonable, GM? Yes. Yeah. Okay, I would move that standing orders be resumed at 5:05 and declare that carried. Okay, during Committee of the Whole, Ms Ridley made a presentation and the committee recommends to Council 1, 2, 3 and 4 and I declare that carried. You got more, or you're just interested? Regional Strategic Plan update.
Thank you, Mr. May. The Manager Governance and Corporate Performance will introduce this item.
Thank you, General Manager. The purpose of this report is to provide Council with an update on the review of the Community Strategic Plan, Wingecarribee 2041, and on the development of a regional community strategic plan in partnership with the Canberra Region Joint Organisation. Council's Community Strategic Plan, the Wingecarribee Community Strategic Plan, is due to be reviewed in the 24-25 financial year and endorsed by the incoming Council on behalf of the community by June 2025. In September 22, Council endorsed a two-phased approach to the review of Council's community engagement strategy and CSP. Phase 1 included analysis of key documents and results of stakeholder engagement obtained through community and focus group surveys, strategic workshops run for council executive managers and coordinators. Following this, council adopted a refresh community engagement strategy in March 2023 and a CSP in April 2023. Since the endorsement of the two-phased approach, the Canberra Region Joint Organisation, of which Wingecarribee is a member, proposed the development of a regional community strategic plan, inclusive of individual CSP chapters for each member council. Given the opportunity to work in collaboration, it was agreed by the participating general managers of the Canberra Region Joint Organisation to participate in this regional project. This new approach will help develop partnerships, strengthen advocacy regionally as well as local issues, and streamline community engagement activities without compromising local outcomes. This report provides an overview of the approach for the development of the regional CSP and high-level timeframes. It's recommended that Council note the report and endorse the revised approach.
At 3 o'clock.
Mr. May, so at the Canberra Region Joint Organisation Board meeting last week, the general managers before the board actually had a further workshop, and as a result of that, there's been refinement to the CRJO's strategic plan, and that now is intended to go to the February board meeting of the CRJO, the Canberra Region Joint Organisation.
That was a discussion they were having about being a member, not delivering. Thank you very much. But that organisation, Project Cura, they're going to be doing state of the nation for all the shires or just us?
No, we'll be leading the State of the Shire work. They will be involved in only the CSP development for the councils.
So they'll be consulting to the council in the development of this?
The staff will be doing most of the consultation work, but they will provide us the tools for the consultation. Then they'll take the consultation material and develop the regional CSP along with the chapters for each of the individual councils, which will then become their CSP, the individual council CSP.
The end of term reports have gone, haven't they?
That's correct. So they've now moved to having the State of the Shire report presented to the second council meeting of the new council.
Well, I'm proposing to do an administrator's end of term report to highlight to the community what's occurred here. There's nothing stopping that happening?
No, Mr. May. So the State of the Shire report, as the manager explained, has replaced the end of term report, but there's nothing to prevent you from doing that.
But I would get no say in the draft State of our Shire report. So I've got to do it myself. Because look, I want to remind residents where they were and where they shouldn't go back to. And I'm going to be blunt. I think the community deserves it after, 3 years of administration, and we've got to show the reason why the Commissioner made the recommendations based on the public inquiry, and the reason why the Minister then moved to get the Governor to keep them out. I think people need reminding before they vote.
Yeah. Did you? No. Oh.
No, you've got to go into
No, what we are working towards is, as a part of the project and to inform the CSP, is having that State of the Shire report, so the content or the data that's included in that, ready by latest July. next year. So there will be some information available that potentially we could look to inform a report at the end of your work or time as administrator here at council.
But I haven't done this work. You have done it. And I want to give credit where credit's due also, but to emphasise to the community and remind them of what used to happen in this chamber.
If I may, Mr Mayor, I might ask Ms Ritley to explain the purpose of the State of the Shire report.
So the State of the Shire could be State of the City, depending on what area we're talking about. But it used to be about what the council had achieved through a term of office. Now it's actually focusing not only on that, but on the performance indicators across the environment, the economy, things that might be actually outside of the council's control as well. So we're trying to get a picture of the Shire at a certain, point in time. What we propose to do is to ensure that we have a State of our Shire report ready by June or July of next year. This is internal purposes only at that point in time. We have a requirement under the Local Government Act to report the State of the Shire to the incoming council at the second meeting. They've been quite specific about that. The second meeting of the incoming council, to give them an indication of how we're tracking against our community strategic plan. It's like a precursor, if you will, and then they can actually explore options for their future community strategic plan based on that report.
Thank you. And just to add to that, so as Mr Administrator mentioned, there have been a number of or a large amount of progress over the last, which will be 3 years when we get there. But a lot of those are very internally focused. So we've had, I think, around 14 or 15 reviews. It's the intention to bring back a report to the council on those 15 reviews that have been undertaken during the period of administration, to report back as a total of how we've implemented. There's a couple of hundred recommendations we've been implementing over the last 2.5 years, and come next year will be coming just post 3. So that's more about how the organisation has performed versus perhaps how we're tracking in terms of delivering on the CSP and the Shire more broadly.
But would that report address issues that were raised during the public inquiry and led to the dismissal of this council?
To Mr May, not the public inquiry specifically, but looking at the recommendations that have arisen out of all of the independent reviews. But certainly if the council was of a mind to include that in that report, we'd be happy to look at that.
And those reviews, would they be reviews instigated by me as well at the beginning of administration?
That is the intent. So there were a number of reviews that you commissioned post-March 2021, which preceded my appointment in June 21, and then there were a number of subsequent reviews that were commissioned post-June 21 through to 22. So the intent is to more or less acquit those reviews that have been undertaken during the period of administration, and hopefully close off that chapter, show what we've achieved, close off that chapter, and then start fresh.
Mm. Well, I'm also trying to work out how to bring an administrator's end-of-term report to the attention, whether it's letterbox drop to the whole Shire, I don't know. But these residents in the Shire need to be reminded of what used to go on in this chamber and the failures of the former administration, and that the place is going forward, and they need to vote for people who have a strategic thought and don't want to play in the sandpit. And these are things I've been saying. I'm quite happy to say them in the council chamber too. Councillors need to have strategic thought and lead their communities. So anyhow, well, look, I'm going to add a clause to this one, so I give notice early. So if you go to the recommendation of number 3, note that an end-of-term administrator report will be prepared for presentation to the community prior to the September 2024 election. Declare that carried. Next item. Thank you. Development application tracker. Residents will have noted that in my minute, I said that would be played at the conclusion of the minute, a video, but it was more appropriate to be dealt with in conjunction with the officer's report.
Thank you, Mr. May. So Mr. Harb, our Chief Information Officer, will introduce this item and then also provide a small, short presentation. Thank you.
Yes, of course. Mr. May, the purpose of this report is to introduce a demonstration of the application tracker, which will replace our current DA tracker. As part of Council's approach to being more consistent, open and transparent, the new software will enable easy access for the community to source information on all documents relating to development applications. The current system's limitations would not have allowed the integration of all the documents relating to DAs into the DA tracker, limiting the information that the community has access to. Currently in the development stage, we are awaiting the completion of the integration of the New South Wales Planning Portal and Council systems. Council has experienced some unexpected delays, and the New South Wales Planning Department has extended the integration time for councils until March 2024. However, WSC will have 80% of the work completed this month and will complete the rest of the integration prior to the due date. The integration is critical for the functionality of the tracker. February 2024 is set as the release date of the application tracker. The tracker aims to provide the customisation of visibility of any application fields, the control over document accessibility, making it able to publish downloadable, listed and locked documents, a follow feature for the public to track applications and progress through email updates, the ability to make public submissions during the exhibition period, and they could be objections, support or comments, a configurable and maintainable solution, and the ability to display the Shire's DAs on an interactive map. Council officers have worked to address the issues raised by Council and the community at the September 2023 meeting, ensuring that any document previously obtained via an informal GIPA at WSC will now be accessible. In short, this will include submitted plans, notification processes, including the mapping of data, internal and external correspondences, and all information submitted as part of the application and pre-DA meetings. Our objective is to ensure the tracker is updated by close of business each day by the responsible officer. Before proceeding any further, I want to highlight an omission in the report. We failed to mention key internal stakeholders who have been involved in this journey, including the Director of Communities and Place, the former Manager of Development Assessment and Regulation, and the Administrator. I would ask that this introduction form as part of the meeting minutes to correct the omission. The GM also recognises the limitations of the current system, including its lack of customisation, adaptability to modern platforms and responsiveness to the community needs. We will now present the video of the application tracker. Just to be clear, we'll make this available online as well. Of course.
Thanks for that. The report didn't, but your introduction did address, I think, every issue that I wanted addressed, and I thank you for that.
Thank you.
I think the community has been terribly frustrated, and again, it's a legacy matter. Many councils had all this. You didn't have to go and do a GIPper and everything else. So if it's skippable, it'll be there, in effect. The only thing I'd ask is, I continue to get letters about calculation of fees and how long it's taking. And at the meeting in September, item 2, the General Manager fixed an internal service standard for the clearance of submitted applications and issuing of fee estimates to the New South Wales planning portal. Has that occurred?
I'll ask the Director to respond to that. Thank you.
Through Mr. May, through your General Manager, Mr. May, that has occurred, and at the moment there is delay with between like the clearing of applications, so when they're submitted, and the fee quotes are provided. Forum last week confirmed we're not the only council in that position. There's a number in the region that are in the same circumstance, and part of that is resourcing, part of it's training up as we get new additional staff in.
I'm not worried about other councils, I'm only worried about this council. But will the planning portal, or what's it going to be called?
This will be referred to as the application tracker.
Will the application tracker have information as soon as it's put onto the New South Wales Planning Portal, onto our system?
So once the information traverses into the council systems, then it obviously is then looked at by the council officers, and then it's allowed to then flow into the application tracker.
Ah, well, that's a downside, because as soon as you put your application in, it's on the tracker automatically or immediately. It still means that the council officers can control when things go on to the application tracker. I'm only talking about, in effect, I get 2 a day letters about how long it takes to calculate the fees when it's such a simple thing to do. And now you're saying it's resourcing. I don't have to do it, so but I think it's important that it can be seen straight away that Fred has put his application in for 42 Elizabeth Street, and it's pending the council working out the calculations.
So that information will be on there. Obviously, it's just the documentation, because sometimes you may submit the wrong documentation, and that's what sometimes you don't want to make available on the tracker.
Oh, well, that's where we differ. I think you make everything available, because a lot of the time, look, I get told that, we submitted everything, and then I make inquiries. Oh, no, they didn't. This is for the staff as well as for residents, that one source of truth. And, there's no question that everybody makes mistakes. That's a taken. But, I think everything that's submitted, and that's why I wanted the pre-development application letters put on there, because, council officers will tell the person from day one what is needed. What I get told is 6 months into the assessment process they want more. And that's just not good enough. The staff would know, and there's difficult questions for you, so I'll address it to the director. You understand what I'm saying?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, but the question is they understanding what information, the advice that they were given prior to even lodging the application?
What's wrong with putting the information they submit straight up?
The only concern, the only thing that does need to be thought of is from the perspective of the wider public when they're making submissions about not being confused about what a proposal is.
They haven't been asked to make a submission yet. That process happens later. And as I understand it, there'll be a plan put up identifying the properties, not the owners because of privacy, but there'll be a plan put up identifying the properties that have been asked. That is going to be some weeks after the original application comes in, so it won't confuse anyone.
I think that what we'd recommended in the past was that the time that the DA is lodged, that we then put then up the pre-DA notes so people can see what was advised previously at that stage.
I understand all that. No, but what I'm saying is that when the applicant puts it onto the state government portal, whether it's all the information or only half the information or wrong, it should go onto our system straight away too. And then, the applicants and anybody else can see, well, the council's asking for more information. The application is incomplete. Now, what happens now is the council gets belted up about these kind of matters when it's not their fault on many occasions. It's the information being submitted. Look, this portal this idea is going to work 2 ways. There are so many professional people who say, oh, I've done that, but they haven't. And look, and I don't know how many times I've drawn attention to matters to the general manager and to you, and got a note back saying the information you got's wrong. But there's a lot where you say they're right. But all I'm trying to say is that, what's wrong with if the application is submitted through the portal It's just going onto our site straight away.
I'm just thinking back to the rationale that we looked at early on. I think under the Act, so if it's actually plans or so forth, there's an indemnity provided under the EP&A Act which commences upon lodgement that doesn't cover a period prior to lodgement.
Yeah, I'm not talking about plans, but the plans, I think we've been there, done that. We're putting them up. It's when they go up is what I am particularly interested in, because, you know, I've heard stories of 163 days, I think that's the best one I've seen, to get a fee schedule submitted, and that's when the DA then starts. You know, I just can. You're obviously concerned about legal stuff as well. I'm not interested in the plans. The plans are going up, and if someone wants to take us on, they can, and I'll take responsibility for that as the council. But if you want to come back with further advice to the council in relation to the availability immediately of anything that goes onto the state government portal, can the state government look at it? Can the state bureaucracy look at it?
I believe we can certainly ask the question.
No, that's not the... No. When an applicant puts their information onto the portal, is that then public for the state government?
As the keepers of the portal, I believe that the state government would be able to, if they're authorised to.
You don't need to get any legal advice, you can just do it. I think it's public information then, because we can't control what they're doing. Is it appropriate to come back with a report on it, or are you happy to say it's going to be done? If it can't be done, you'll come back?
I'll be guided by the director as the technical expert.
Could I suggest, Mr. May, that what might be able to be moved is that we do all that we can to make that information available, whatever information can be made available between the submission and lodgement be made available, and then we can take further advice.
No, I really think that to make this one source of truth, that as soon as it goes onto the state government portal and it's fed through to us, I don't know what happens when you put it onto the portal, but when it comes through to the council, it should, and you know, the aim is to try and update it daily, and that's only an aim. It obviously won't happen all the time, but as soon as possible, it should be up there, and then residents can see, and councillors can see, anyone can see that, gee, there is a delay in getting these fee sheets back. What's going on? When the General Manager has a service standard set of X.
So, Mr. Mayor, I think Mr. Harb wants to talk about the mechanics of how it gets from the state portal into our application tracker.
Yes. So I guess to answer that question, any submission that is made on the planning portal will flow through into our property and rating system, which would then go into the application tracker. That's not I think the issue at hand. I think it's the documents that may take a little bit longer as we have a look and make sure that the documents that are being fed through are the correct documents.
I think the administrator is saying if the applicant makes a mistake and doesn't provide the correct documents, so be it, and they are uploaded onto the tracker, is there any issue with that? Probably to the director from a technical side.
Through General Manager, Mr. May, I would like to, if possible, take that on notice to put it beyond doubt.
This organisation has a lot hinging on how this works. And at the moment, this organisation is being blamed for everything when it comes to a DA. The consultants, the planners, the architects, everyone has that slow moving target of the development section of Windsor-Carriby Shire Council. I'm trying to have one source of truth so that if they put the wrong information in, they're accountable. And if there's an email or a letter there saying we need this, this and this, so be it. Because that's what happens, isn't it? Well, why not make it public? Anyhow, well, would it be best if you come back if it can't be done, or do you want to come back anyway?
We'll come back if we may. We'll take it as a question with notice and bring it back formally to council. I would say sometimes we get it wrong, sometimes applicants get it wrong. So I'm not saying it's one way or the other, but there's a combination. But we'll take it as a question with notice, Mr. May.
And if the council gets it wrong, they should put their hand up and say they got it wrong. It doesn't happen the other way. They blame the council. But if there's one source of truth, you can see exactly what's going on. And I think to make this work, that's necessary. But so I don't need to touch the motion. It'll just come back. Yeah, I know, but I think I've made my position as the council very clear. Well, I want to change this recommendation to noting the further advice of the Chief Information Officer and read into the minutes. Council receive and note the report. Read. That's what he asked, could they be included in the minutes, the READ. Thank you. Declare that carried. Next item is 9.4. General Manager.
Thank you, Mr. May, and back to Mr. Harb, the CIO. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. May, the purpose of this report is to seek Council's endorsements of the Customer Experience Standards and Charter. The Charter and Standards were placed on public exhibition and we received 6 responses from the members of the community. By endorsing the Customer Experience Standards and Charter, Council establishes clear levels of service and a quality of service delivery. Council is committed to providing consistently positive customer experience to our valued community members and aligning our processes with the highest standards of customer service excellence. The Charter serves as a foundational framework, allowing us to strive for continuous improvement. Thanking Mr. Fitzpatrick for his presentation within the public session. Regrettably, after the agenda had been submitted and published, it came to our attention that certain feedback provided during the exhibition period had been inadvertently overlooked. Mr. Fitzpatrick had subsequently advised Council of this after the Council meeting agenda was issued. I would like to note that I returned a call to Mr. Fitzpatrick yesterday as he was concerned about Council omitting information, and I had advised that we would look into it and rectify the oversight by incorporating it into the report.
Just to explain, so with the feedback that was received during the community consultation, the way that the feedback's received, it goes into like an Excel spreadsheet. The officer who prepared the report only picked up part of that spreadsheet and not the second part of the spreadsheet. So what I would like to request, Mr. May, is that Council defer the report on the Customer Experience Standards and Charter until the February 2024 meeting to allow for the report to be updated to include the information that was overlooked from the submissions.
Look, to me that makes sense, but also it will give Mr. Fitzpatrick the opportunity to digest what's just happened with the DA tracker too, about accountabilities. So I think that makes sense. So that Council will defer the report. I declare that carried. And built into the minutes will be the fact that Mr. Fitzpatrick raised these matters? Do we do that when people come to the question time? Yeah. Yeah, we've got your table submission. That'll be attached to the minutes. Okay. Next item is 9.5, Resource and Waste Management Strategy. General Manager.
There is no introduction, Mr. May. However, if you have questions, the Manager, Waste and Resource Management is here.
I have notes everywhere today. This is the one. This is the one where there was no attachment into the business papers, but it's come out as another item now, which needs to be addressed so they link in the minutes.
That is correct. There was an oversight with the attachment of the final document. I would note that the final document did not change post-exhibition based on the feedback received. But as you mentioned, Mr. May, it was circulated as part of the supplementary paper on Monday.
So it will be attached to 9.5 and the other number can't disappear because it's a record of the council. So there'll have to be a reference put on that, which we can deal with later. Okay, in relation to item 9.5, I'd move the officer's recommendation as outlined on page 109 of the business paper and declare that carried. Bulky waste collection service.
Thank you, Mr. May. Mr. McAllister, thank you.
Mr. May, the purpose of this report is to present to Council the analysis undertaken and the preferred option for the ongoing provision of the bulky waste service across the Shire. Prior to 2022, Council provided a bulky waste curbside collection service under a user pay system. For the past 2 years, the bulky waste collection has been undertaken via a scheduled system funded through the Domestic Waste Reserve. Abraxia Management Consulting was engaged by Council to undertake a review of the curbside collection delivery options, the impacts to the domestic waste management charge, and to identify best practice adopted across councils within New South Wales. Generally, there are 3 options offered to residents to manage their bulky waste: a scheduled collection, a pre-booked collection, or a direct delivery, which is usually to a waste collection facility and is managed through either a voucher or specific free weekends. Each of these options have different participation rates, collection costs, resource recovery rates, and address social issues and impacts to community presentation to differing levels. The paper recommends the adoption of a pre-booked collection service based upon the following principles. It's fair and accessible to all eligible residents. It supports the resource and waste management strategy, the ease of participation for all residents, and provides the overall best value to the community. The benefits of a pre-booked system include waste is not presented on the curbside for any more than 1 day. Declaration of waste improves efficiencies through the collection, separation and recovery process. It also provides an opportunity for increased recycling through reuse, reusable and or resaleable goods of items, improving waste diversion. It is a consistent, uniform system that is available to all residents when they need it, is available to all residents, obviously capped at 1 collection per residence or premise, addresses social impact issues, whether that be health, mobility or resource issues, assists in addressing non-compliant items before they're actually placed out for collection, limits opportunistic illegal dumping, and is 60% the cost of a scheduled service. The pre-book system would require the resident to call and book the collection for a day within the week that the collection is scheduled within their zone. It is proposed that the Shire is separated into 5 zones that would align to the curbside collection day zones to make it easier for residents to understand the zoning, and would effectively rotate every 5 weeks. So each zone will get an opportunity to participate every 5 weeks across the Shire. Eligibility and the items collected would remain the same, except for the exception in the removal of mattresses from the accepted items. This is required to limit both the collection costs and the recycling costs associated with those items. The proposed commencement date would align with the commencement of the new financial year, being July 2024.
I don't understand, when you've got a ratio of 2 to 1 supporting what we're doing, you want to change. It's you know, the report to me seems to be more focused on dollars than residents.
Mr. May, one of the things that was quite profound in the bulky waste surveys is that residents, yes, loved the scheduled service, but they did not want to pay for it. This provides, I guess, the best balance between providing the service, but then also managing, I guess, council's financial accountability and delivering the service.
But residents, when they're saying they like it, know they're paying for it.
At the moment, because it has been funded through the domestic waste reserve for the previous 2 years, it is seen as a free service.
It's not. On page 115, table 4, collection cost comparison, is that $140,000 still in there, or has it been taken out?
That was removed out post the
Thank you.
bulky waste report presented to council in September.
Page 121, you're saying you allow for 8,400 collections per annum, or in effect 35 appointments per day, and you've got 5 zones across the Shire, and you had a 80%, or dropped down to 70 something the last time round, that's nowhere near the number. This concedes, in my view, that the staff or the consultant, whoever it is, concedes that there's not going to be the take up when you've got a ring up.
You are correct, Mr. May. The experienced participation rate across a number of councils that actually implement a pre-book service is around the 40%. So the resourcing is then geared around that participation rate so that you don't have redundant resources or inefficient collection of the cost.
The report deals with people adding more rubbish to rubbish already put out, but that was in part a failure of the contractor.
You are correct, Mr. May. There was 2 failings that contributed to that. One was the delay in the collection against the scheduled times, which did allow opportunistic dumping. The second part was areas that are not eligible and/or people took the opportunity to essentially illegal dump in areas that required to be cleaned.
Was there a penalty to the contractor for not adhering to the specification?
In this instance, no, there wasn't, mainly because there was resourcing issues and other impacts that affected that.
So it went on for weeks in the some northern areas of the Shire. It went on for a long time. Look, I don't agree with the report. And at the end of the day, I represent the ratepayer, and I think this is, I think if ratepayers, well, they know at the end of they must know, the fairy godmother doesn't pay for the service. It's coming out of rates. And with the new contract coming up, I think you're going to get a better deal at any rate. for this kind of a service. We're paying through the nose because it's an extra, and that's what happens with commercial operators. That's just the rule of thumb. You know, if the new council wants to change it, they can. I'm not. And what's going to happen to the mattresses? They're going to be dumped in the bush, or people? You think people are going to drive them to the resource recovery centre?
We do accept them at the Resource Recovery Centre, and currently we do receive around 2,500 to 3,000 mattresses per year. So
Yeah.
it is quite popular with residents, as it is currently.
Look, these are just my views based on the feedback of elation I got when this was reintroduced. And I know it's been tough in dealing with it. But, you know, sometimes in responding to communities' expectations, it's necessary. And I know that many councils are going to a paid, a free service. But look, I don't agree with this. I acknowledge the work involved in having the other system, but you know, this has potential to be booked out for months. I personally think it will be. Where I live, it is. It's hard to get a collection when you ring up because they're booked out, and that's not service to the community. It's a lot better than the service this place had, none in this kind of thing. And I think that's by the 80% take up, it was shown that it was a service in demand. What would you think about allowing residents 2 per annum?
Unfortunately, Mr. May, the main issue with 2 collections per annum does escalate the cost significantly, because a lot of the cost associated is in the actual collection. So the current cost experience over the last 2 years have been just shy of 1 million. If we were to add a second collection per year, it would add a further $500,000 to the cost.
But you've got time now to go to tender if you wanted to. The current contractor failed you in many areas with the last collection, and you wore that. The council wore it, not the contractor, the council. And what would stop us going to tender for? There's a 2-year extension to the existing.
We're currently preparing the documents to go to tender for the collection service, which will include the bulky waste, which is why it's critical to get a delivery model. But the implementation of that contract would be not until June 2026.
This is a difficult one. My personal view is that residents know someone's paying for it, and if the council doesn't pay rates to itself, the ratepayers run this show with their contributions. I'm loath to change, but we've got time on our side. So what I'd like to do is defer the matter to the February meeting, and a report be prepared on any relationship on the failure of the contractor to comply with the collection specification, I'm sorry, the matter be deferred and 1. No, I'm sorry. I apologise. I wrote a lot of this stuff out on the weekend. I could have given it to you, and I apologise. That the matter be deferred to the February meeting. The matter matter between meeting of council after 2001. You take those 1, 2, 3, 4 out if you want. And 1, a report be prepared on any relationship on the failure of the contractor to comply with the collection specification and the illegal dumping complaints outlined in the report Two, a review be undertaken of the total appointments listed in the report and participation rates. Semicolon. Further, a costing be prepared for 2 booked collections each year maintaining the precinct. What should you call it? Precinct? Yeah, precinct. That's a good idea. The precinct basis. 3, further consideration be given to the collection or other disposal options for mattresses, bracket, non-commercial. What I mean in number 3 is maybe you get a voucher a year to drop a mattress off at the, I don't know, it's up to you. But I just seem to think to just cut mattresses when the numbers you're talking about is not providing a service to the community. Okay, 1, 2, 3, I declare that carried. Next item is 9.7 Resource Recovery Centre, General Manager.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to request that we defer this matter as I've become aware of information late this afternoon, and I'd ask that we defer this matter until February.
No problem.
Thank you.
The matter be deferred. Parking fees and fines, 9.8. The matter be deferred, declared carried. Do you want to have an adjournment for a while or keep going? Yeah, I'm easy. Yeah, 9.8, parking fine fees.
Mr. May, there's no introduction. However, the Manager Development and Regulation is here if you have any questions.
I did.
Come on down, Mr. Shaleto.
What's your estimate? I assume this will start pretty well straight away. What impact will that have on the $170,000 that was shown in the quarterly financial statement as loss of revenue?
Thanks, Mr. May. I guess in terms of the revenue, I think it's outlined in the report as to how many fines that we can actually reduce, I guess, to reach the budget. In terms of how we start that, obviously it's just collecting it as we go.
Probably an unfair question to you, so the CFO may be a better person to answer it. I was amazed at the quarterly financial statement that there was a $170,000 shortfall in projected revenue. I think from reading it, there was an extra employee employed, and they thought that would achieve it, but it hasn't. So I can come back to that question. The other questions I've got for you, do our parking officers work 7 days a week?
We have officers that are on call, but no, not necessarily.
So I could park all day in Bowral and not be fined?
Possibly. So we're looking at ways that we change our current practices.
You can get contractors, you know.
We have looked at that in the past, but we are looking at different practices that we can use with our current staff, that we could, in a way, do that 7 days a week.
Okay. Thanks.
Just with the $170,000 that the budget adjustment went down for, year to date, so end of November, we're looking at about $17,000 collected of parking fines of the $170,000, which means we're essentially 10% of the revised budget for the year. So we're still very much short of that 170. So it might go up even further.
But there'll be an improvement reported.
In theory, if we can start collecting some of these fines and issuing fines. So year to date, I guess, we're way behind the 8 ball. So unless we can get some traction that front, it is unlikely that we'll even meet that 170,000 target.
Oh, it doesn't matter. In relation to item 9.8, I'd move the officer's recommendation, and as outlined on page 130 of the business paper, and declare that carried. 9.9, there's no introduction. I would move the officer's recommendation as outlined on page 133 of the business paper, and declare that carried. Windsor Caribbean Youth Strategy, page 143. The fact that we have a youth committee was news to me. When does that meet?
Mr. May, I'll ask the Manager, Community Life and Libraries, to speak to this item. Thank you.
Through you, General Manager. Mr. May, there was a youth committee for a short period for the delivery of a grant program. So you're right in that there was one, but there's not one now. But however, the recommendation is that we do create a new youth strategy, and as part of that we would develop a youth committee or working group as part of that process, and hopefully something ongoing so there's a voice for young people.
No, I didn't, but on page 144, a youth committee was established to guide the project's direction and to organise a diverse range of workshops and exhibitions. 5 young people came on board as part of the committee, it meeting fortnightly. So that was history.
Yes, and it was for a set period for that program.
Thanks. In relation to item 9.10, I'd move the officer's recommendation 1 and 2 as outlined on page 143 of the business paper, and declare that carried. 911, General Manager,
Thank you, Ms.
Destination Southern Highlands.
Yes, thank you, Mr. May. For the Director, Corporate Strategy and Resourcing, Ms. Foster, speak to this item.
Thank you, General Manager. Through you, Mr. May. The purpose of this report is to respond specifically to the Council resolution of the 20th of September 2023 that the report be deferred and that the membership of the Visitor Economy Advisory Panel be deferred and the General Manager provide options within the parameters of governing bodies' statutory responsibility for the Visitor Economy panel to have direct decision-making opportunities. Council considered various options in consultation with Destination Sydney Surround South and industry in addition to what is currently in existence in Destination Southern Highlands. 3 contemporary models are outlined in the report. 3 contemporary models are outlined in the report in addition to option 1, which is the current model that we utilise. Option 2 is an advisory panel without delegation. Option 3 is an advisory panel with delegated powers. And option 4 is a corporation model. Council is proposing option 3, a visitor economy advisory panel with delegation to undertake strategic marketing campaigns in accordance with Council's community strategic plan, delivery plan, operational plan and budgetary process. It is proposed within the first 12 months of the advisory panel that the VEP would prepare a visitor economy plan that aligns with the goals and objectives of the Destination Strategy 2020 to 2023. 2030.
Thanks. Look, I think we've got there with this, but I've got a couple of suggestions. General Manager, when council officers write reports, the council cannot request an officer to do anything. That's the General Manager's role. So all references in these, or in it's schedule, what's it called? It's anyhow, the Southern Highlands Visitor Economy Advisory Panel was on page 404 of the attachments. And there's a couple of references in that to an officer, where it should be the General Manager. Then the General Manager delegates. That's the General Manager's prerogative. Which officer does it? So there's that. And I believe any reference to Destination Southern Highlands should be removed. Destination Southern Highlands is the council. That's just the brand. And on page 3 of that document, it talks about the panel meeting 4 times a year with the council. That's a nonsense. It should be the General Manager. You don't want them to meet 4 times a year with the councillors.
Sorry, Mr. May. That was with the officers of Destination Southern Highlands.
No, that shouldn't happen either. I believe it should be the General Manager, and the General Manager determines who they'll meet with. And hopefully it will be the General Manager, because of the importance of visitation to this shire. But that's a matter for the General Manager. I can't say that. So I would move wrong one. The officer's recommendation, as outlined on page 154 of the business paper, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and a new 8. Attachment 4 be amended to provide that the General Manager allocates appropriate resources for the panel secretariat, full colon or semicolon, delete references to council and Destination Southern Highlands in relationships to council I'm sorry. So attachment 4 be amended to provide that the General Manager allocates appropriate resources for the panel secretariat comma, delete references to council and destination Southern Highlands in relationships to council, capital R, bracket P3, close bracket, with General Manager and replace any references in the document to council officers to General Manager. And a new 9. A short discussion paper be presented to council in the new year on opportunities for volunteering at the visitor centre. Declare that carried. Next item is Community Resilience Officer presentation.
Thank you, Mr. May. The Manager of Community Life and Libraries, Ms. Badgett Julef, will present on this item, and she has a presentation and props. So thank you.
Thank you, General Manager, through you, Mr. May. So the purpose of this report is to provide an update on the recovery and resilience initiatives that have been delivered by the Community Resilience Officer. That what I'll be showing you tonight is what's been completed and what's upcoming. So I'll head over to the presentation. So following the Black Summer bushfires, Council applied for federal government funding to create a Community Resilience Officer role to work closely with the bushfire impacted villages, to work on resilience initiatives, to build capacity within the community, so from recovery to resilience. So some of the projects that we worked on, and again, a link to also the bushfire response and recovery review that you requested that council do. The Community Resilience Office has been working on that. So the actual grant itself and the position is a 2-year funded program, so it actually finishes on March 31st next year. So some of the projects that have been completed since August 2022 are Paint the Town, which is a mural festival, and I'll go through each one of these in turn. Climate disasters and mental health workshop, emergency management and resilience meetings, community resilience small grants programs. We've started an oral history project just recently, and also the Resilient Towns Initiative, stage 1 of that. So Paint the Town was delivered in partnership with Southern Tablelands Arts, so where we delivered 12 public art murals across the Shire in those fire affected communities, and members from, like community members from those communities actually helped co-design what those murals will look like. So we brought together nationally acclaimed artists and local talent to create these murals that reflect the recovery journey since 2019-2020 Black Summer bushfires. We launched this with a free family event, which was called the Laneway Festival, and these murals now form part of our arts trail. So whilst that was that part of the project, we will continue to do that type of work ongoing. The next one was the Climate Disasters Workshop. So we did work with experts on climate change and the health impacts and how to prepare for emergencies. So obviously not every emergency is related to fire or flood. It could be heat waves like we experienced last week, and I'm sure we'll experience more of, but it was designed to work with the community and local service providers on how you prepare for those climate related disasters. The emergency management and resilience meetings, I feel that they were quite a big success. So we had 48 people attend in Exeter and 75 people at Bowral Village. So that's where basically all the combat agencies, Lisa, as well as our Limo, Greg Bray, presented to the community about what they can expect if there was an emergency, how really the community can prepare, and giving the community tools to be able to be prepared for any type of emergency. The Community Resilience Small Grants Program is another project that has been delivered. So that one was calling on the community, groups or associations, and a report did come to council on this one back in October, to providing financial assistance to those groups to run a range of programs within their villages or in the community to prepare for emergencies. So I do have a show and tell. Sorry, so Lisa and I were very impressed by this one. This was actually Bundanoon, so Village Association. So they developed our Go Bag. So within the Go Bag, they also ran a community expo, but there's a bandage because there's snakes down near Bundanoon train station. So to prepare, if you know the bandage, they also have a power bank. So they gave people within their communities a power bank, so to charge their mobile phones, obviously if electricity goes out, etc., and also a high-vis vest. So really simple that you need to put on in the case of emergency. So a wonderful way to engage the community, give them some freebies, but to ensure that they're prepared if there was an emergency. We've also been working on, as part of this project, communication. So we've really improved our website and updated our communications. We've prepared comms plans in case there was an emergency, recognising council is not the combat agency, but working closely with the RFS, SES, etc., to prepare the communications and how we share out that information. So you're seeing that through e-news, social media, etc. We have started, I've already moved on, haven't I? I've already pressed the button. We've also started on the Resilient Towns Initiative. So that one just kicked off, and you may have seen it in social media as well as e-news. So this one's delivered in partnership with New South Wales Reconstruction Authority and the University of New South Wales. So this is working with, we've chosen 2 villages, so Wingello as well as Balmoral Village, to basically, literally, there was a map on the ground. You can see the map, it literally was that, to start to model where the communities can find local solutions and how they can make their community safer. So basically they work with them to look at how they can reduce or prevent disasters. Some we can't, so it's about how do we adapt and how do we work with that community. And this work builds on the work that we've been doing with New South Wales Reconstruction Authority, where we've started to map a recovery plan if another disaster was to occur. And basically, because we have so many villages, every village is different, so we've been giving that information to New South Wales Reconstruction Authority. The oral history project actually kicks off next week. So we've chosen 10 to 15 people to be involved in oral histories. So that's in the northern villages. And this is really working with a historian to collect, record and preserve a whole of life experience related to their impact either by the Green Wattle Creek fire of 2019, but also their experience in recovery and also resilience. So that project goes across till March next year. However, the interviews start next week. The Resilient Futures Workshop, so this is in January next year. So this will be working with the agriculture sector. So again, we're working across the villages, but also with the different sectors within our community about strengthening capacity, capability and coordination of their networks, and also building upon drought resilience. So different again to fires as well as storms, etc. We have an Earthflix movie being shown on the 31st of January. So this is in regard to a special screening that is an event to commemorate the anniversary of the 2019 bushfires. And this one again builds on that resilience, environment, sustainability themes. This is jointly funded. So it's not just about Wingecarribee, however, will be featured as part of that. We've then got the Be Connected, so again, ensuring we recognise that our community connects differently. Not everyone has access to technology, so it is about, or those who do may not be digitally savvy, so it is working in partnership with Robinson CTC to roll out some training for and workshops for people who are over 50 to assist them in their digital savviness and being able to download apps, etc., and also being prepared, whether that's the hazards app, etc. We are also running a Resilient Leaders Workshop in partnership with Quest for Life, and this is designed to really build leaders in our community, to build their resilience and work within their communities. So they'll be trained in about trauma, because obviously recovery takes as long as it needs to take. There's no one set time that people recover from a bushfire, etc. So we'll be building capacity within our community through this Leaders program. The next one is inclusive resilience, so working with, we're having a queer ball, queer formal, to provide a safe and inclusive space for our LGBTQI community and young people to heal and celebrate around their resilience, as well as a therapeutic program for neurodivergent young people. So that one will roll out in partnership with Community Links, but also we'll be working with our schools. As many of you may be aware, 3G is closing as such in terms of our access on the mobile. It'll no longer be 3G, it'll go to 4G and 5G apparently. So this workshop, we're working with the telcos to provide a roadshow across the community. So we believe there's about 500 people across Wingecarribee who are in that 3G network who will be impacted once that network closes. So rolling out roadshows with these telcos to get people to either go to a new phone or to what they need to do to be ready for that changeover. So there'll be one-on-one discussions available for the community. And then the last one that we're rolling out before this grant funding ends is Strength Through Adversity. So this is an event and will be at the Bendooley precinct in Bowral, and it will be bringing together people to talk about their experiences, their trauma, through works and performances, through art, and working with creatives. So it will be quite a beautiful day, I feel, like quite a beautiful piece. So that's where we're at in terms of community resilience. As I mentioned, the funding does finish on March 31st. So we, as you would be aware, Mr. May, and I think it was mentioned earlier, in terms of the the bushfire review. A report did come to council back in April 2023, where we provide an update on that and closed off the report. However, I believe as part of Danielle's report next year, there'll be more information as well. But in some of those recommendations and even some of this work I presented, whilst we won't have the funding, some things will be absorbed into the work plan of the community development officers. So it's our role to provide community resilience. If in the event there was another disaster and we were declared a disaster zone, New South Wales Reconstruction Authority have said they will give funding for another recovery or resilience officer. So thank you.
Thank you. The 31 January film, where will it be at? Bowral or? Yeah.
I'm assuming, yes, it is
Yeah,
in the cinema.
In relation to item 9.12, community resilience, I'd move the officer's recommendation as outlined on page 167 of the business paper and declare it carried. Pardon me, General Manager, 9.13, no introduction, but look, I didn't understand in this report, let me get there. Why the council supports the New South Wales Reconstruction, should be, not S, advice to use Give It to establish and manage donations during any donation of disaster events. What's in the lead up to the 2024 local government elections, mate? What's the relevance of that?
What we put forward was that the new council coming in could change that if it could be reviewed at that time. But
Well, they can, but why invite them?
We can change that.
You know, the days of a mayor running around handing money out, that's what we tried to address. So you give them another opportunity. I would just leave it to Give It. If the council wants to change it, they can.
I support
So
that.
I'd like to take out in the lead up, leave it at that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If I could just add to what Ms. Badgett-Julef has said. So just with Give It, it is the state government recognised body, and it does make sense to have that level of independence. I'm aware that the council is still holding some funds from the donations that were collected as part of the 1920 bushfire appeal, and if I may, if we could perhaps bring back a further report to council to advise of the funds that are being held and how best to treat those to the February council meeting.
Can I ask a question about that then? A lot of the money was the council's money in any event. The council had made some contributions, but will that take it? Will you be getting advice of other councils what they do in such circumstances? Because I think some councils just hold the money for the inevitable next emergency.
We can certainly seek advice, and I'll ask the substantive CFO to perhaps talk about the source of those funds. But as recommended in the report, moving forward, the collection agency or organisation would be through Give It. Mr. Kuzmanowski, would you like to elaborate on the funds we hold currently?
Yeah, the idea with that second point of the resolution was to do a bit of an audit trail on it to see where the funds and how the funds were collected in what nature. So we didn't have the opportunity to have a look and see what in how those funds accumulated to that point in time. So we'd like to be afforded a bit of time just to see where that money came from, to then see how we can best allocate it out and give some options to council.
I suggest you don't go to where it was allocated or just open wounds, because it was dealt with in the public inquiry. Anyhow, so your number 2 is what then?
I would suggest that a further report be presented to the February 2024 council meeting on how the remaining funds be allocated and subsequent closing of the Merrill Fund.
Okay,
So we
well,
feel
for
comfortable.
ease, I will move that. But this needs to be tidied up a bit. That you only need one that, but that can happen later. I declare that carried. Rate pegging methodology.
Thank you, Mr. May. I'll ask Mr. Conrad to provide a very brief introduction explanation. Thank you.
Thank you, General Manager. The Independent Pricing and Regulatory Tribunal has been setting the rate peg for council since 2010. In August 2022, IPART embarked on a review of its rate peg methodology after including a population growth factor in determining the rate peg in prior years. Council would like to thank IPART for the engagement with stakeholders, which included ratepayers and councils, on the changes made to the rate peg methodology, and Council wishes to acknowledge the time and effort that has gone into developing the revised methodology and the final report. Under the former rate peg methodology, IPART used factors somewhat generic for all New South Wales councils. This has been updated under the new methodology, and some of these are now more specific to the individual circumstances of councils, having regard for their employee, asset and other operating costs, as well as the individual arrangements with emergency services such as the Rural Fire Service, New South Wales State Emergency Service and Fire Rescue New South Wales. While these changes are welcome, they are unable to address the significant gap between the rates peg and recent inflation. The IPART rates peg for 23-24 was 4.1%, and the recently announced 24-25 peg was 4.6%. The 23-24 operating expenditure budget accounted for an inflation index of about 3.5%, but the inflation numbers range between 7.6% and 5.6% in September 23. This means that the cost of delivering council services increased substantially more than the rates income. This gap continues to exert significant pressure on the long-term sustainability of council. In the information paper included as an attachment to this council report, IPART provided the rate peg to all New South Wales councils. The core rate peg ranging between 4.5% and 5.5%, with population factors from 0 to 2.7%. At the high end, Blacktown Council received a rate peg of 7.1, while Camden was at 8.2. Neighbouring councils such as Shellharbour was at 6.2, Shoalhaven at 4.5, and Wollondilly at 5.4. Windsor Caribbee's rate peg of 4.6 compares favourably at very low in the state. Council officers will incorporate the 24-25 rate peg of 4.6% into the draft 24-25 operational plan and budget to be presented to Council in April-May 2024, to be publicly exhibited as part of the IPNR suite of documents thereafter. Thank you, Mr. Administrator.
Thank you very much. It was a complex report to try and go through. In relation to item 9.14, I'd move the officer's recommendation as outlined on page 197 of the business paper and declare that carried. Agritourism. Not being introduced. In relation to item 9.15, agritourism, I'd move the officer's recommendation 1 and 2 as outlined on page 204 of the business paper and declare that carried. The Southern Highlands Bridge Club.
Yes, thank you, Mr. May. I'd like to table for the minutes an email that was received from the Bridge Club on Monday in relation to the item on the business paper, and also a document that was emailed earlier today, I believe, again from the Bridge Club in relation to the report before you.
Thank you, I've read them. This matter's not being introduced.
It wasn't intended to be introduced, however, officers are prepared to respond to any questions you may have.
Well, was the decision of the council to loan them $400,000 a legal decision?
Mr. May, to the Director.
I'd have to take that question on notice a legal decision. I mean, at the point in time that was
I'll rephrase it for you then.
Thank you.
Were the appropriate statutory requirements of the Local Government Act complied with by the former administration in making the offer of the $400,000?
Through you, Mr. May, no, they weren't.
Thank you. In relation to the $150,000 that was offered under the premise that they would have a 20-year occupation of the Moss Vale Golf Club. Correct?
That is correct.
The Council's original resolution was that the General Manager be authorised to proceed with this matter on the basis that the community interest was protected. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Well, I think the council officers have done their job, because the argument with the Bridge Club is not with this council. It should be with the Moss Vale Golf Club, because the community interest is being protected. And, you know, there are many organisations in every local government area who raise money to do things and who give their time so generously. And I don't think the Bridge Club is any different in that arena. And what happened was, because of the fact that it wouldn't have been possible, I don't think at the end of the day, for the council to give the Bridge Club a loan of $400,000, or it might have been, but it was going to be very protracted. The reality is they couldn't have built the club for that amount of money any rate, having regard to current costs. And in my view, it would have been an alienation of public land where it was proposed, or where the council, former council, gave them the lease. Now, the $25,000 you're suggesting we reimburse are the actual paid costs, not pro bono or generous volunteers?
Yes, Mr. May, they're actual costs.
Yeah. Well, I think this is very fair. And I'm going to add a number 3. That in the event... Oh, no, sorry, I shouldn't say that. In the event that this matter is not finalised by the 29th of February, the General Manager be delegated authority to commence proceedings what I want to do is, under their agreement with the council, they had to have a development application by a certain time. That hasn't occurred, in my view. They may have deferred commencement. However, in satisfying the deferred commencement, I don't think that they could unless they took substantial loans. And the rules that apply in this instance are the rules that apply to anybody, a council, a private person, in the provision of parking, etc. So I believe that there was a clause in the agreement, if I recall, where if the DA hadn't have been action within a certain period, council could just terminate the lease. And if the council just terminates the lease, it's done and dusted. This can't go on forever. And, you know, I think the council has tried to help, looking at other sites, but the argument's not with the council, they've been let down by a third party, in my view. So in the event that the matter is not finalised by the General Manager be delegated authority to commence proceedings to bring effect to the legal agreement. We have a legal agreement with them, don't we?
Yes, Mr May, we do. We have an agreement for lease.
General Manager, do you think that's fair and reasonable?
I believe it's fair given the number of meetings that the officers have had and the Office of Assistance to help the club find alternate venues. I know that the property team have had a number of conversations with Bridge Club members, and I agree we do need to bring the matter to a close.
Declare that carried. Next item is Rural Fire Service. I'm sorry. That's right. Oh. Page 220. Look, this is a great outcome for the residents of Bowral. They felt neglected, and the council has worked hard. I would like to add a number 10 Messrs MESSRS. I'll better spell it. KRACHT. Messrs MESSRS, and the surname is KRACHT, and Ireland, IRELAND, generosity, and community spirit in making the land freely available, be acknowledged in correspondence, under the signature in correspondence, under the signatures, of the Administrator and General Manager, and accordingly I'd move the officer's recommendation 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 as detailed on page 220 of the business paper, and plus 10, and declare that carried. Next item is the sale of proposed closure of land, proposed road closures and potential sale of land in Mittagong and Robinson, as outlined on page 225 of the business paper. I would thank the staff for taking me around to have a look at this. There is one matter that it doesn't worry me, but I think it needs to be looked at, and that is the failure on the part of the council officers to recognise where they put council budget implications, the key elements of council's community strategic plan, in other words, to spend the money will be under leadership, people, places, in environment and economy. Section 43(4) of the Roads Act says the matter will be spent on roads, and if you go down to Mittagong, where the area you're proposing to sell it, that's where the money should be spent. The roads are atrocious. They're goat tracks. And I think, you're going to get quite a bit of money eventually when you sell this Mittagong money. And I think it should be reinvested in that area. But that's going to be a matter for another, not me, another council. But I'm going to add, I'm going to take out number 5, because I'm not going to give delegation to the General Manager for something like it happened in 3 years' time. That'll be a matter for the new council. But I do think number 5 needs to be replaced with council note its obligations under S43 under section 43 bracket 4 of the Roads Act. Declare that carried. And actually out at Robinson, just remember when it goes further along, I think there'll be a reduction in lot sizes at the end of the day in Robinson, which would substantially assist the 2,000 square metres. They're all things that will happen long after I've gone. 9.19 Sutton Forest Hall, page 237. Oh yeah, I'd move the officer's recommendation as outlined on page 237 of the business paper 1 and 2 and declare that carried. 9.20. I'd move the officer's recommendation as outlined on page 242 of the business paper 1, 2 and 3 and declare that carried. 247. Oh, yes. The Joint Select Committee on Protecting Water Utilities. Did Mr. Mellor appear before?
Mr. May, he did appear via a video link, yes.
Well, that should be acknowledged, I think, because there's not many council officers appear before a select committee. So, council endorsed and note the appearance of Mr. Mellor. So with that change, I'd move the recommendation as outlined on page 247 of the business paper and declare that carried. Signage material assessment. I've got questions about this one.
I'll ask the manager, Environment and Sustainability, Mr. Arthur, to be available for your questions.
I was told that there were complaints, but that's not about the signs I had put up about village visits, and that I couldn't do it for the second round. Those complaints aren't mentioned in the report.
I'm not aware of the complaints.
through you, to Mr. May, we had community feedback about concern about use of the plastic or corflute signs.
But that robs the community of a communication process. Everyone uses them. Why is the council going to penalise itself in trying to consult with its own community?
So, Mr. May, the intent of this report is to provide alternatives to the corflute material. Mr. Arthur, if you'd like to talk through the key elements.
Sure. Look, the report looks at corflute and other alternatives. At this stage, there's no recommendation to stop using corflute. It talks about the best uses of corflute and when alternatives can be suitable. Some of the alternatives in relation to that are more sustainable, which have like a plant-based or fibre-based material.
I read all that in the report. Yeah. But tell me, this would only apply to the council, not to anybody else.
That's correct, yes.
So why would the council pay more money when it tries to communicate with its residents to satisfy unnamed people who have made a complaint? You haven't got to answer it.
Yep.
Look, I don't want to be unfair, but I was quite angry about this because the corflutes worked in my first round, and in my second, I think it was the second round. In this last round, I've had a lot of people talking to me. Most of them have been booked out, but I think I would have got more. And some of the villages have put their own signs up that I'm coming, whereas we have these signs. And there's still some there, which have just got to be rubbed out. The council uses themselves, so the council is inconsistent. I'm going to move no further action. So, in relation to item 9.12, signage material assessment, on page 257, I would move no further action to be taken in the matter. I'm just sorry, you were probably the meat in the sandwich, but I wasn't impressed by what happened.
Look, Mr. May, nor fear nor favour, and the report isn't against signs or signage, it was offering alternatives, but take your point.
Yeah, but the report doesn't say whether the complaints were internal, external, where from, and that was what I was trying to achieve, to find out so I could go and talk to the people, which I do, as you know, and tell them they've got to be realistic. If they want this council to communicate, not everybody goes online, and corflutes work. You've only got to see where they are everywhere. But anyhow, it's history. I'd move that no further action be taken in the matter. And declare that carried. 9.23, insurance pool membership, 260. I've already flagged with the staff that I was intending to change this recommendation to accord with the recommendation of finding 24 of the report. So I'd move that one you can take those 1 and 2 away. That one, in accordance with finding 24 of the PFS consulting report, the council go to the market for all its insurance protection and brokering services I've got a question. Do we use brokers now, or do we just use the
The brokering service is through, currently through Statewide, which is JLT.
So they provide the brokering service and the service.
So JLT provide the brokering service as part of the, but they place the policies in the best possible.
Isn't that a conflict?
Well, it's how the mutuals operate. So
do we want to go to tender for brokering services, or we just go to tender ourselves?
just just for insurance purposes. To try and councils don't go, like, haven't tendered for brokering services specifically as a separate.
Mr. Mayor, I suggest that we go to tender for our insurance services.
Okay. In accordance with finding council go to the market for all its insurance protections, take the rest of it out. That enough? Yeah. And 2, the general manager ensure that all relevant review findings are put in place. So they'll get some value out of the PFS report, because some of what they say I think makes sense. That's acknowledged. Yeah. Declare that carried. Code of conduct complaint statistics.
Mr. Mayor, no introduction. However, the manager governance and corporate performance is available.
On page 268, the 150, that's $150.
That's correct.
Big difference from 220,000.
A significant difference, because in 1920 we spent about 81k on code of conduct costs.
In relation to item 9.24, I'd move the officer's recommendation as outlined on page 265 of the business paper and declare it carried. 9.25 investments report. There's no introduction. I'd move the officer's recommendation as outlined on page 271 of the business paper and declare it carried. The payroll one. The way I read this, 9.26 payroll system upgrade, there's no introduction, but I've got some questions.
So I'll ask Mr. Kuzmanowski to make his way to the chair. Thanks.
Do I read this report that this council still operates with manual timesheets?
That is correct.
You know, you're coming from a very low base. That's all I can say. That's why there needs to be an end-of-term administrator's report. It's not going to go into this kind of detail, but the fact that in 2023, Winter Carriby Council is still using manual timesheets says a lot about the previous administration. You can't blame the councillors for that. The report doesn't note the effect. Well, I don't think it says how much. Oh, yes, it does. But it doesn't offset what there will be in productivity savings by all the people who haven't got to go through all this stuff. There will be productivity savings with this, I presume.
We're anticipating there is, yes.
Anticipating, or there will be?
Anticipating at this stage. So we are digitising the last part of the process, which is the payroll area, and then as we move through the process, we need to capture the digital side of capturing the timesheets digitally.
Okay, I understand. Thank you. In relation to item 9.26, I'd move the officer's recommendation 1 and 2 as outlined on page 279 of the business paper and declare that carried. 9.27, revision of the local planning committee terms of reference on page 282. The way I read this, we could have done this from day one.
Mr. Mayor, I'll ask the Director to respond to this question. That would be Director Service and Project Delivery.
We probably could.
Well, see, I was told, even by the Department of Transport and the General Manager's Company, that we couldn't do it. So we could have done this way back then.
Through the Director.
According to the latest information, we could.
So what'll happen in the future is it'll be like a panel meeting. So it'll be broadcast from the open part with residents, if there are any. But it will always be broadcast what the determination is. So the chair of the committee will read out the recommendations. Well, thanks very much. I think it's a great outcome, and I'm being chased by some other councils on this, which is, I think, we might be the first with this too. In relation to item 9.27. I'd move the officer's recommendation as outlined on page 22 of the business paper and declare it carried. Country mayors, item 9.28. I'd move the officer's recommendation 1 and 2 as outlined on page 291 of the business paper and declare that carried. Traffic Committee, I'd move the officer's recommendation as outlined on page 318 of the business paper and declare that carried. The supplementary agenda. In relation to item SA11, I would move that it be noted that this matter was dealt with No. Sorry? No, I'm talking about the resource and waste management strategy. It's listed twice, so you got to clean it up. So, where is it? Page 9.5. I believe it be noted that this matter, wrong item. Our problem is this shouldn't have been given a number.
Yeah.
It should have just been circulated. So now you've got to clean it up.
Yes, so can I maybe suggest that the manager governance provides some guidance on how best to approach that? Thank you.
I can just move that you know that this matter was dealt with. You can, yeah. So SA1, I'd move it be noted no. Now we want the supplementary agenda. Sorry. So SA1. You got it? No, that's that one. It's I move that it be noted that this matter was dealt with in conjunction with item 9.5, this agenda, and a copy of the strategy as circulated be attached to the minutes. And a copy of the strategy be attached to that item. Declare that carried. Okay. Sutton Forest Sand Quarry, General Manager.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. May. Mr. Arthur, the Manager Environment and Sustainability, will speak to this item, and perhaps, Mr. Arthur, if you can provide a short update too on the discussions you had outside with the members of the community following their presentation, that may be helpful for the Administrator. Thank you.
Well, look, I don't want to be rude, but I've read the report.
Yep.
You've taken me to the site. Were the residents happy with your submission?
Yes, they were. Look, it was really just in relation, sorry, through you, General Manager, Mr. May. Yes, they were. They obviously, some of the points raised in the public forum dealt a lot more on the health impacts, which our submission doesn't go into a lot of detail. And also the other points that they really pressed on me was the lack of consultation that they felt that they had received in relation to this. Again, I don't know if our submission touches on that in great deal at all, other than still raising that the community has a lot of concerns. These were some of those points were raised in our original submission back in 2018, and if anything, we could resubmit that submission again, and because I feel like there is still a lot of those items that weren't fully addressed in the response to submissions.
Having regard to what you heard in the public forum and your discussions following the forum, which I thank you for talking to the residents, does your recommendation change?
It doesn't in substance, only that we could probably add into the submission the recognition that the community, the level of community, there's still a level of concern in the community, specifically around the lack of consultation and also the health impacts.
Okay.
Those are matters that I would hope that New South Wales Health...
That helps. So we put number 3. Council convey to the department its disappointment in the lack of consultation with its community on such an important state-controlled application. Does that pick up?
I think so. If anything, the other point raised in the public forum was around the health. I don't know if we want to mention that specifically in terms of the public concerns in relation to the health, and that for that to be fully investigated by the New South Wales Health.
But what one would expect that the state would
Yes.
get from its agencies.
Absolutely.
So you're satisfied that we've done our job?
Yes.
Well, I thank you for that. You're happy? In relation to item SA 2.1, Sutton Forest Sand Quarry, I would move the officer's recommendation 1 and 2 and add the third one. The council conveyed to the department's disappointment in the lack of consultation with its community on such an important state-controlled application. Declare that carried. SA2, response to the Minister for Planning. Page 62 of the supplementary. General Manager.
We weren't intending to introduce, however, the Exec Manager Strategic Outcomes is here to answer any questions.
I think it's important to note in the minutes that I was paid the courtesy of having input into this correspondence, and I think people will be able to read my contribution as against the professional officer's contribution, but it's going under the signature of it's going under my signature. Oh, that's fine, okay. But it's a draft that's been, so I would adopt the officer's recommendation, and we've now adopted the Bowral Town Centre plan, so that's covered.
It is, Mr. May.
So that's what we need to do, I think, isn't it? I think it's particularly interesting is on page 67, the work that is happening in this place to address the very issues that the Minister's raising, and one that can only hope that he acknowledges where we're coming from. Okay, I would move that Council endorse the letter of response to the Minister for Planning and declare that carried. The planning panel.
Yes, thank you, Mr. May. The Manager Development and Assessment, Mr. Shalito's back. If you could provide a short introduction. Thanks.
Thank you, General Manager. I'll try and keep it short. The purpose of this report is to provide an update on the membership to the Wingecarribee Local Planning Panel and to confirm Council's intention to continue with and extend the term of the Local Planning Panel. Under the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act, Council must have a single local planning panel for the whole of the local government area. That local panel consists of 4 members, with 3 of those members being what the Act refers to as an approved independent person. What that is essentially a person nominated by the Minister. On the 26th of July 2021, Council appointed several members to the Wingecarribee Local Planning Panel. The term of their appointment is up until the 29th of February 2024. The Department of Planning is currently recruiting a pool of experts and chairs for the next 3 years. Once the Minister has appointed that pool, Council can appoint their chairs and chair and experts. However, the Department's not expecting that the pool of experts will be ready until May 2024. The Department has said that they're going to provide notification on how to extend the appointments to cover the interim. At this point in time, they haven't provided that notification. However, a report can be tabled at the February Council meeting to advise of the options to extend the existing appointments, to cover the interim, and to seek Council's endorsement.
Thanks for that. Can I just clarify that this is about membership, not the panel?
That's correct. So,
Thank you. Thank you. In relation to item SA 3.1, I'd move the officer's recommendation as outlined on page SA 72, 1, 2 and 3, and declare that carried. SA 3.2, licence to discharge water into a rail corridor. There's no introduction. I would move the officer's recommendation as outlined on page SA 76, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6 and declare that carried. SA 3.3, naming of new community hall at Penrose. I would move the officer's recommendation as outlined on page SA 80 at the supplementary agenda and declare that carried. Section, get back to the other agenda. Page 320. There's no introduction, but can I ask, why wasn't all this done concurrently?
Sorry, through Mr. May, 10.1?
Yeah.
Yes. I might ask, Mr. Arthur has left. Could I ask the Director, Communities in Place, to respond, or the Director, Service and Project Delivery, because the plans of management straddled both directorates?
Look, I don't want to be unfair if the relevant officers aren't here, but it's disappointing that I wasn't corrected when I was saying that the Department of Planning had all this when we still had it. And in my view, the work they're talking about should have been done concurrently. Why put it up to council, not completed? Anyhow, I don't want to be, Barry's not here, so if you can pass it on to him though, that I think these kind of stuff, it's got to be done concurrently. In relation to item 10.1, I'd move the officer's recommendation as outlined on page 320 of the business paper and declare that carried. Item 10.2, quarterly delivery program. I don't actually remember this one, but thanks for the information at any rate. In relation to item 10.2, I'd move the officer's recommendation in relation to 3.1 and declare that carried. General Manager, any late items?
Yes, Mr. May, we do have a late item in relation to the annual report that was provided at the last meeting. So
I have to...
In accordance with the Code of Meeting Practice, I would suggest as a matter of urgency to note an amendment to the legal proceedings.
Okay, in accordance with section 9.3b of the Code of Meeting Practice, I would move this matter as a matter of urgency to note an amendment to the legal proceedings information included in the Council's annual report and declare that carried, and now rule that to be an urgent matter.
Thank you, Mr. May. I will now ask the Director of Corporate Strategy and Resourcing to explain the need to bring this to this meeting and what we're seeking from Council. Thank you.
Thank you, General Manager. Mr. May, since the publication of the annual report, it has come to our attention that some of the information relating to legal proceedings included in Part 2 of the annual report, pages 90 to 91, was incorrect or was omitted. That was due to an incorrect version, table being utilised in that report. The cost and expenses information for a number of legal proceedings were incorrectly reported. The following legal proceedings were not included: Iron Law Pty Limited versus WSC, Maxon Developments Pty Limited versus WSC, Trio Enterprises versus WSC, Albeck Management Services Pty Limited versus WSC, Edwards Pension Fund versus WSC, claim for cost by Christine Fenwick in the matter of Woodside Properties Pty Limited and Rochester Estates Pty Limited versus WSC,
and Knox versus WSC. The following leading proceedings should have not been included as they were finalised prior to the 2022-23 financial year. Eisenschmidt Pty Limited versus WSC, Willow Land Corporation Pty Limited versus WSC and others. I'm tabling the amended legal proceedings information to replace the information currently included on pages 90 to 91 of the annual report. The annual report will be updated and republished on Council's website, noting the correction. The annual report will also be reissued to the Office of Local Government, also noting the correction.
Before I want to view the changes. See, this doesn't help, because 511 Mossvale Road, Bowral, judgment handed down, outstanding costs order. What was the judgment?
Sorry, with the notes that the director just read, there should have been a table attached, which. That's what it's called. Yeah.
Yeah, this is a statutory document. So that, look, there's 1, 2, look, I don't want to adopt this because it's incomplete. Look, I'd move that the matter be delegated to the General Manager they're not. That the matter be delegated to the General Manager to ensure compliance with Council's statutory obligations. That's enough, I think. And declare that carried. In doing that, I'd expect this is going to have to come to Council in the new year, because it'll be read into the record of the Council, but you can get on and send it off to the department. Any further? Sorry? No. I've declared that carried. I'll leave it to you. It's your responsibility, not mine.
Thank you. Just in terms of this is our final meeting for 2023, and just wish to thank Mr. Conrad for his time as acting CFO. This is your last council meeting, and thank you for taking charge while the substantive CFO was working on some business improvement initiatives. So appreciate your work. And also to formally welcome Dennis Killick, who is our new Executive Manager Strategic Outcomes, and Mr. John Shalito, who's our new Manager Development and Regulatory Services. So with Dennis and John's appointments to council, that completes our management team, which is very exciting and great to have you both on board. And I know that you'll make a really a positive impact to Injacarriby and the community. So thank you. And you've both been here 6 weeks, I think. So very new. Just on behalf of the team, I wish to thank the community for the partnership and the projects and the way in which you've worked with us over the last 12 months, particularly the Chambers, Business Southern Highlands and Grow Southern Highlands. Our community partners, volunteers and the village associations have been great to partner with, and we saw some of those projects earlier from the Manager Community Life and Libraries. And I'd like to thank the management team. The administrators mentioned to me a number of times today how big the business paper is, and I think it shows just how much that the team are doing, particularly the coordinators, managers and directors, and I thank you for your work this year. And also to thank the administrator for his support of the organisation and of me as the General Manager, and wish everyone a safe, happy and healthy festive season, and look forward to working with you all in 2024. Thank you.
Well, thanks, General Manager. And if I could just say to the new people, all business papers aren't like this. This was a tough one. But we've got through a lot of business and there's a lot of catch up to do in this place. But if I could wish everybody a great festive season. Thank the General Manager for the courtesy she's shown me over the last 12 months. I wouldn't have your job for quids. It's a hard yards you're still doing to do a lot of catch up, and you know there was items on this business paper tonight that shouldn't have been there through no fault of the current administration. But look, that's enough from me. I just thank you all. I wish all the staff, the General Manager, residents, everybody a great Christmas, and enjoy the break because we're back at it early in the new year. Declare the meeting